Welcome to We Are Libertarians for this week. I am your host, Chris Spangle. With me is a cast of thousands today. As always, though, is the one and only Greg Lenz.
How are you, Chris?
I'm doing very well. To my right is the lovely Brett Bittner. Brett.
I love that descriptor. Thank you.
Brett, you, I don't know how to describe you. You're the man in the machine for the advocates for self-government.
That is true.
The marketing guy, I guess you'd say.
Sure, I'll go with that.
So when I left there, he moved up here and now is producing Liberty out of Indianapolis. So we're glad to have you back here on the show.
Yes, sir. Glad to be here.
We're talking about education, and you also have...
I might know a little something about that.
Yeah, you also have a certain distinction. What is your distinction in terms of education in the LLP?
Oh, yes. Twice elected Libertarian, served in the belly of the beast with regard to education on the Marietta City School Board back in Georgia.
All right. So an elected school board official.
In a big city.
In a big city, Marietta.
About Fort Wayne size? Is that about right? About 150, 180?
Greater Marietta, yeah. Marietta proper, about 60,000 people.
Okay.
And it's always proper in Marietta.
Southern proper.
Best barbecue Chris has ever had was there.
It was. Very good. Very good barbecue in Marietta, Georgia. Also...
Dave Post.
Where?
Oh, he was asking where we went. And
He being Jeffrey. Jeffrey is not his real name. We were going to go with Maya, but you apparently did not want to be called Maya. There's only one Maya Axton, and she would be here to murder us if we... So
Absolutely. How can I compare with the incomparable Maya? I guess in this capacity, though, of traveling under an alias, I am probably one of the most dangerous characters in the state right now. A teacher who just doesn't give a damn.
So we are going by an alias because why?
I am a middle school teacher in the state of Indiana, and the school that I work for requires that I make no public statements regarding education or education policy.
Right.
Basically a gag order.
Yes.
Right.
And it's very common amongst teachers, and I would say if you look at what's going on in the news right now, if you aren't saying what they want you to say, they'll shut you down.
Right. So we will get to education. We surprisingly have never talked about education reform in any way, shape, or form here on the show, and this is the 99th episode. Now, last was our 99th episode, if you're listening. So let me explain. We've done a little work. We've done a little work.
I'm confused, Chris.
How am I not on the 100th episode?
Well, I was on the 100th episode, and we recorded that like 2 months ago.
You will be on the 100th episode. It's the magic of podcasting.
Oh, has that not been released yet?
No, it's out.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I'm so confused.
So during my lost weekend, roughly this time last year, we got out of sequence somehow, and we never actually recorded an 81st episode. And so we've been under the working impression that we've been doing all these, we've been one off. So I had to go back and re-edit all of the download, edit the metadata of each episode, re-upload, and then go and edit the website. I mean, it took days. I had 2 days off this week. That's all I did was editing. But now everything is in stereo.
Well, and
96K.
naps. Don't forget naps.
Oh, I did take naps. There will always be naps. Before the podcast today, I had to take a nap because I was just a real diva. And so I took a nap, and I wake up. I have to wake up at 5 a.m. every day for work, and Jeffrey was I almost revealed the curtain there. Jeffrey was stopping by at 6 p.m., and I hear a knock on the door at 6:20. I wake up. I freak out because I'm late for work, and then I freak out because he's been out in the negative 10-degree weather for 20 minutes. Thank God he was late. But so I haven't eaten. None of us have eaten. It's 8 o'clock at night. We're punchy. We're tired.
Blood sugar levels are low.
Right. So it promises to be either a really good podcast because it'll be fist fights, or it'll be really bad because we're all tired. So yes, you will notice that the podcast feed has been updated. We've gone back in and I've re-edited all the titles. I've cleaned everything up. I've re-uploaded new audio. It is all 96K and stereo and sounds good as we can sound. We did have one problem though. There was an episode, I think it's 83, 84, where Maya was on, and it was just Maya and I doing a podcast. Somehow, every file of that episode that I have got corrupted. So I have no copy of that episode. If you have archived copies of We Are Libertarians, and you happen to have the MP3 file of that episode, please send me an email at spangle@wearelibertarians.com so we can Dropbox that to each other, because I'd like to re-upload that episode, but I don't have it. I don't have the...
It was just you and Maya, episode 84?
It was me in my coming out of the Lost weekend. I was trying to be found. We needed to get an episode out, and I just talked to Maya. I said, let's do a little mellow episode, you and me. We talked for a couple hours, caught up. Maya hadn't been on in a long time, not since she had struck me, left in a blaze of glory. So we were just catching up. It was a really good episode. It was summerish, last summer sometime. So if you have that episode, please, 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 save that MP3 file, send it to me so I can put that back in the feed.
Maybe somebody has it on LP.
Maybe it's on vinyl. We're
8-track, perhaps.
Perhaps.
We are very popular with the hipster crowd, much to Greg's chagrin.
Yes.
So he has no time for organic foods and charcuterie.
No, whatsoever.
So I would like to say that if you like this podcast, more class announcements. If you like this podcast, we don't ask for money from you, although you can give us money at the PayPal donation link at the bottom of WeareLibertarians.com. Not required, but there is no such thing as a free lunch. It does cost us in the hundreds of dollars a year to run this website. But really, all we want from you is to let us know that you like the show by liking our stuff on Facebook, retweeting us, sharing our content on Facebook. Greg wrote a great explanation of net neutrality that we're going to post on the Facebook page. Share it. It's a perfect guide to what net neutrality is. We're going to talk about that here in just a second. All we really ask for you as far as currency and supporting We Are Libertarians is just share our stuff and engage with us and let us know that you're out there. Like I said at the end of last week's episode, there were many times over the last years we were very unproductive. Well, although I'm glad that we did not, we were just kind of like, we're tired. I'm tired. I just, it's tough to get together. But the reason that we kept getting together and now we're kind of back to where we're at is because you kept writing us and saying, we like the show. Where's the next show? Sharing our stuff. Our Facebook page has grown to 8,000 likes. I mean, we can't believe it. Our Twitter's like almost 6,000 people. I don't know how that happened. We have 3,000 people listening to this show every time we put out an episode, which is...
Downloading it.
Downloading it. Yeah, not just streaming it. So we are very impressed with our...
Get a life.
I mean, thank you. Thank you. So...
Find some friends. Get a hobby.
So we appreciate you for everything that you do, and as you can tell, we are back to being regular. I am back to being regular for the most part. So that I think ends our announcements. And as we have the last few shows, thank you, Phyllis Klozinski, for your amazing gift.
You're the best.
She recently gave a gift to the website through the PayPal link at the bottom that basically covers hosting for a very long time. So we greatly appreciate it. So we are broadcasting proudly from the Klozinski Studios. So I like to
the
call
golden Klozinski microphone.
So, and Phyllis has written a couple pieces on the Indiana General Assembly. If you're a Hoosier, go check out WeareLibertarians.com and check out her pieces on what is happening. There's a couple really scary bills, including one by Mike Delph, who is wanting to download your cell phone. We'll talk a little bit of Indiana politics. Jeffrey, this is mostly an international broadcast. We are heard in over 8 countries now. We're big in Thailand. I don't know why.
That includes the sovereign individuals within the United States that are libertarians.
There you go. Yeah, that's about right.
Because otherwise it's 2.
Oh, yeah. An offshore gunnery platform off the coast of Great Britain counts for a country.
It's a lot like pirate radio.
So we have, in our early days, we did spend a lot of time talking about Indiana politics, but I was working for the Libertarian Party at the time, and it was 2012, and there was a lot going on. So we try to stay nationally focused. And I'm giving you this speech that I should have given you off the air, just so you kind of can frame everything. You being a former radio personality yourself, Jeffrey and I worked together at a radio station once upon a time. Rest in peace, WXNT.
It's actually Abdul.
Yeah. this is
Wow, Abdul, you have changed so much since the last time I saw you.
So try to keep everything national, but as we talk about education, I think we ought to talk about net neutrality first before we dive into education. I don't want to spend a ton of time on this because it's too late. It's already passed. But I think people have...
well, the good news is it passed before we knew it was in it.
Right. It's like 300-some pages, and nobody knew
Well, it doesn't
was
technically pass since it's enforced by an agency and there's no bill.
So,
no, but they had a vote today, 3-2.
3-2 vote, yeah. Democrats, they won.
And if you go to our Facebook page, wearelibertarians.com, you can find it there through there. There's like the douchiest picture of the
Wheeler.
They're holding hands.
Holding hands?
Yes.
That's like the
But
most.
that's one that everybody's using. Every media outlet is
It's
using
so
that image.
self-congratulatory and weird, and it's just.
Well, they're populist champions.
Jeffrey and I are talking about our hatred of the FCC here in a minute, but Greg, why don't you give the details of what happened today with net neutrality? Go through the basics, what happened, what it is, how it's going to affect us.
Well, it's a bit of a Trojan horse, just to set it up, as it was brought about by a Supreme Court ruling where the justices actually issued a ruling that taught the plaintiff that lost how to get it, or the government how to get it appealed, and then get a brand new set of rules. So they ended up voting on it. Commissioner Wheeler, is it Wheeler? Tom Wheeler, I believe.
So I know it's Wheeler. But
Yeah, Wheeler. All signs were pointing towards multiple solutions. So you have essentially an internet toll road to keep the ISPs happy, and then you have the free, whatever this download speed is going to be, whatever that is. Ended up not working that way. Ended up getting pushed towards a free and open internet, to quote President Obama, where all data has to be kept the same.
And anytime the government says something is free and open, it's going to be free and open, right?
What data will be more equal than others?
Right.
That's coming soon.
That is one of the questions, because there are one. How do you tell a private company how they have to treat their product?
Very easily. You make them a
Government-sponsored entity,
sponsored monopoly.
And they like it. That's the sick part about this. So they'll come out, they'll do the PR press, blah, 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 blah. This is so wrong.
Verizon put out a funny press release today in Morse code mocking, the 1930s internet regulation.
This is basically from, if you're familiar with Atlas Shrugged, this is the anti-dog-eat-dog rule. So there's X amount that goes around, everybody gets their slice of the pie, everybody gets profits, and it goes on from here. Now, it doesn't take effect for 60 days until this gets published in a register on the website. And the Republicans get to issue a dissent, but it'll end up not having any effect whatsoever. So what this does is it reclassifies mobile broadband from Title I, the Telecommunications Act, to Title II. So it basically makes it like AT&T, those types of organizations, which no longer invest in infrastructure and try to grow and offer a better product. They try to find a better way to milk the cow and take their existing aging infrastructure and squeeze more profit out of it. That is a terrible thing for all of us, because you get these, what I like to call social justice warriors, captains of freedom of the internet, that talk about the providers not being able to throttle data to websites they don't like unless those content providers like Netflix, like Amazon Instant.
By the way, Netflix is almost half of all domestic internet traffic.
And they already pay for priority is the real kicker.
Right.
So this is all an illusion, more so than anything.
Greg, here's the thing. I am very excited that we're now going to be able to have dial-up speed at the same prices that we're paying for broadband.
Oh, it'll be fantastic.
Yeah.
$100 a month for that 28.8. Maybe they can even bring back the sound for us every time we connect to the internet, just to make us feel nostalgic.
I'm glad I kept all those CDs.
Yeah.
They're going to come in handy. I know. You guys want them?
Look at all those
$25 a pop.
Look at all those free hours of AOL you're going to have.
Is there interest on that? Like, does it compounding hours, like rollover minutes?
Oh, yeah.
Net Zero is going to be making a comeback.
We posted on the We Are Libertarians Facebook page a video of an interview that Mark Cuban did the other day with Glenn Beck, where he talks about priority, where bits are bits.
Hey, Mark Cuban doesn't know anything about the internet.
He sold a company
Broadcast.com. Oh no, I know that
for
he's got it.
$5 billion. He walked out of there with a $3.6 billion check.
Straight cash on me.
Yeah, he has the record for the single largest online purchase of $41 million on
eBay
for a plane.
Gulfstream.
Right. The dude is awesome.
Yeah.
He's
IU grad,
IU
too.
grad, just like you.
Gentleman and a scholar.
So Cuban is talking about priority, where now bits are bits, and so packets being sent over the internet and your cell phone and via your cable. Your cable box is sending bits. It's sending data. And they prioritize that. So as you're watching Blue Bloods, as I often am known to do, or if you're watching, what's another television show?
Shark Tank.
Scandal.
Shark Tank. Scandal. If you're watching your Lifetime movies.
Hell on Wheels.
Ladies. Hell
Hell
on
on
Wheels.
Wheels.
That's a damn good show.
Yeah.
And Better Call Saul.
I have not watched
not
it yet,
seen
but
it.
I hear
It
good
is
things.
Breaking Bad without all the wimpy wife and kid stuff. It's
Right.
amazing.
So, all those feelings.
Right. We don't want feelings.
Yeah, get out of here.
We took a show about humanity and removed the people. It's awesome.
It is awesome.
It's like Greg Lenz produced it.
Yeah.
So as they send the signal to your cable box, it's bits. And so the bits being sent to your TV are given priority over what is being sent to your Netflix, what is being sent to your cell phone, what is being sent to your Wi-Fi devices. And so at some point, somebody will sue, and it will become open. And so there will just be an open pipe being sent to your house. And so if one person is watching Netflix and another person is downloading podcasts and another person is watching YouTube and another person is watching TV, or if they're all doing that and they all have the TV on, you're going to start having TV buffer.
Imagine a person
crackle.
with a gallbladder that probably needs helped, a person that had their leg cut off, and a person with a gunshot wound walked into an emergency room. The doctor doesn't get a pick priority.
Right.
He treats them
Well,
E-
and
in
equally
the order
the
they're
same.
delivered.
Right. And so what ends up happening, it's like I have satellite here, although I am becoming a cord cutter in roughly 2 days. Tomorrow is my last day with my cable box. Going to be an emotional time. Going to have a lot of things DVR'd. I'm just going to sit here and watch things tonight after you leave and just think about cable. But so because it's satellite, when it's windy and rainy and it starts to crackle, that is what's going to happen to your TV, because the internet will no longer be lesser priority than your TV. So,
And you know, all of those screen sync, second screen things that all of these cable channels and network TV are doing, where they're promoting that you get this extra content when you're sitting there watching their show and you have the tablet or your phone in front of you, that's coming to an end because
Social engagement.
right, that's the end of it.
Yeah,
because
totally.
you're not going to be able to surf the internet while you're watching television. You're going to have to prioritize in your own home what is most important to you, rather than having it brought to you in that way.
It sounds to me like we will never know the things that we will miss. That this will stifle innovation at a level that the best and brightest, the things like Facebook, the things like the iPhone that relies so heavily on data. These things, could they really be a possibility?
no. Listen, the government, a public utility, it's going to be a public trust, and so it's going to be open and free for everyone, and they're going to make sure that everyone has equal access, and it's going to be regulated by the government. And don't you trust the government?
And they're definitely not going to censor anything.
Let me talk about the FCC for a minute.
Yeah.
That was my segue for you, Chris.
Jeffrey and I have worked in radio. I work in radio currently. I work for the Bob and Tom Show. It is a nationally syndicated radio show.
You got your license, boy.
I don't have my license. They luckily do not do that. So back in the early days of radio, there was concern that that radio would become. It just was this wild, wild west. It was unruly, and people were launching antennas, and people were broadcasting. They just people didn't know what they were doing.
Telling people even how to build their own radios.
Right. It was just sort of dangerous. And so before you knew it,
This is very scary stuff. I'm glad that we have the FCC.
Like
in place.
Lenovo
Right.
laptops.
we were going to run out of signals at some point because of the growth of this thing. And so the FCC was created to assign call letters and numbers and frequencies and administer the bands. So there's many different airwaves. There's the AM, there's the FM, there's the signals that your police radio frequencies go over, that your CB radio, your citizen band radio goes over, that your...
Do they also cover all of the mind control radio
there's
waves
the
too?
HARP signals. Listen, man, HAARP. Look it up.
Oh, God.
Just saying.
Hyper Americans. I don't know.
I don't know. So yeah, that's the ADHD wing of AARP. So the so they needed to regulate radio. They needed to make sure that it remained free and open, and that some major conglomerate didn't buy all of the radio signals in the United States and block out the little guy. So they needed to maintain order. And what ended up happening is Cumulus, Clear Channel, Entercom, Federated Media.
There's only 6.
That's like it.
There's 6.
Right. CBS Radio used to be Infinity, then it was CBS before that. I mean, so...
But this magical thing came about, the internet.
And then the internet is wild and open and free, and so we need to make sure that it doesn't get out of control. We need to make sure
no one
it's
grabs
open
up all the internet real estate, and
Right.
they won't be able to send data through.
One of the things that occurs to me, and I know at the risk of getting off on a tangent, think about the internet 10, 12 years ago. Remember how dangerous it was? Don't put your picture on
Napster.
That's right, Napster.
Very dangerous.
Or if you put your picture on the internet, somebody's going to find out who you are. They're going to come to your house and they're going to kill you. We still, at my school, we play these internet safety videos, and they're very reminiscent of the. They're very reminiscent of the.
Greg's dark internet mind just went to the dark web mind just came out and hit his laugh.
Well, they remind me of these 1960s and 70s death on the highway type videos, and it is very much so that type of thing where if you share the wrong thing online, somebody's going to rape you and sodomize your cat or something.
Greg's currently looking for what he can share online.
This is fantastic.
Yeah.
This is great news.
Well, if you do it from here, it'll be Chris's cat.
That's why it's great news.
Where is the internet today? Do we hear these horror stories? Do we have a safety issue, a public safety issue?
Clearly, Craigslist is a problem.
You're
Like
right.
three,
I hadn't thought about
three
that.
people have been killed. So, yeah, it's just like anything else. It's in how you use it. And there have been radio people that have been killed because we have security issues all the time where people are just obsessed with what they think they hear. They're schizophrenic, and the free radio comes into their mind, and they hear our voices talking, or not my voice, but
Alex
their
Jones.
voice. Yeah, and so, the FCC started as a way to regulate and make sure that it remained free and open. And then somewhere along the line, they started regulating free speech. And
Decency.
Well,
Yeah.
and here's the thing that really bothered me as we're talking about net neutrality and we're talking about turning the internet over to an entity to regulate and monitor and potentially censor. We're turning that over to the people that spent 12 years fighting in court about Janet Jackson's nipple slip at the Super Bowl halftime show.
But they will never do that.
12 years
So
they
let-
spent fighting.
so let me explain what it was like, because I worked in radio in the aftermath of that. And we worked at the lowest rated AM station in Indianapolis, the 50th Market. I mean, so we couldn't get lower than where we were working at. I mean, it was... Nobody gave a crap, and now I'm working...
We had a person say, I can say foul words, right?
Yeah. That's
We
what
had
do
a
here.
person say fuck during drive time on our station, and our program director didn't even hear about it.
Who was
That's
that?
awesome.
He was our young news guy. He was actually really
Was
good.
it Scott?
No, it wasn't Scott.
Oh, I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
He actually went on to good things, but I was listening to.
Hilarious.
Yeah, he just played. He got crossed up, and
Is he governor now?
Right on,
No.
right on the air.
He's a sportscaster in Toledo, I think.
I think that's right.
Yeah. So,
Got a funny story about Toledo that I'll tell you later.
all right. Yeah. This blizzard of 78.
Yes, it was.
So,
Hart was in town.
So basically, I started there in 2004, and I'm trying to be professional and carry the
I'm
show,
sorry.
and I just want to laugh.
I'm so sorry.
You're fine.
That's really funny.
The what happened in the aftermath of the Janet Jackson thing? People like Bubba the Love Sponge were fined $750,000 for a single incident. Howard Stern was constantly fined. I just recently, at Bob and Tom, they were fined several times and had several complaints filed against them. There was a guy named John Price who was really going after them for a long time and kept suing them because they were being indecent and violating community standards. And, the thing about the Bob and Tom show is Howard Stern always liked to push the limits. Bob and Tom have always operated in the realm of being naughty and kind of walking up to the line, taking a look at it, and then kind of stepping back and kind of staying within those Midwestern sensibilities. And you might have to change the channel if the kids are in the car if the song Camel Toe comes on, but by and large, you're probably going to be okay. Whereas, Howard Stern was like, let's have naked women all over the place. Bob and Tom, I think, had a naked woman in once.
Stern's confrontational, where Bob and Tom is goofy.
Yeah, and so they were never looking for trouble, whereas Stern was actively taking on the FCC and started the Fuck the FCC campaign. And, because what happened after Janet Jackson, even down to WXNT where we were at, you knew you couldn't talk about bodily functions, bodily excretions, curse words, anything regarding sex, bathroom humor, anything, body parts. You could say penis, but it had to be in a clinical term. You may be able to call someone a dick, but we didn't really know if you could call someone a dick.
What if that was their nickname?
You can call someone an ass, and you can call someone a hole, but you can't call someone an asshole. You can't say butthole on radio. The FCC, if they got one complaint from one of our 5 million listeners to the Bob and Tom show, would then, as a panel of 9 people or whatever, 6 people, 5 people, would sit there and decide if that was if that violated the community standards of the markets in which the Bob and Tom show was heard in. So let's say somebody goes on and says butthole repeatedly, and one person found that to be egregious, and they then fined the Bob and Tom show into oblivion. They $25,000 to Bob, $25,000 to Tom, $25,000 to Cumulus, $25,000 to each of the 120 affiliates that were heard on. Like, there is no...
And that's per instance, right?
Per instance. And it escalates to the point where if you're Bubba, the Love Sponge out of Tampa,
you're done.
You're fired and you can't get work anywhere because you're just toxic. And
your wife leaves you for Hulk Hogan?
Right, and then she's doing a sex tape with Hulk Hogan in your bed. And look what happens. This is what government does to people.
Wait,
why did I never have this fun in radio?
Government drives you to marry Hulk or date Hulk Hogan?
No, his wife left him. And
got it.
Right. So at what point? So the moral of my tale is this: these 5 people hear a complaint from one person out of 5 million people, and decide for that one person and the entire United States what community standards are. The broadcasters have zero clue what you can and cannot say. We have zero clue as to what is defined, so you end up saying nothing. And so your free speech is killed. And so people who want to listen to Howard Stern do edgy radio or Bob and Tom sing a song about camel toe, that may be their community, but it's not the community for all. So you just don't get that content anymore because it's over public airwaves. And it's okay if it's NPR and it's... You can say fuck all day long on NPR. You can go on and you can say whatever you want on NPR because it is not.
But you have to
commercial
extend your
radio.
lower jaw and say,
Right, yeah,
say
you have-
fuck in a vernacular.
Right, you have to say it softly like this. We should do a parody version of We Are Libertarians as the NPR voices sometime. That'd be funny.
It's happening.
So you
Get those audio cues lined up, man.
Liberty guys, it's happening. We promised to do.
It's happening all over the place right now.
So, anyways, nothing is defined. So you see the problem with this. So at what point do we have the argument that community standards need to be defined? There already has been a war on pornography on the internet. And I'm not talking about like the scummy upskirt, I'm the revenge porn of your ex-girlfriend that you're putting online and you're humiliating another human being. I'm talking about, the Lisa Ann, the Nayland Palin woman who is voluntarily going out and doing it for a company that makes profit off of money. That is publicly indecent, and that shouldn't be online. Those groups are out there. So at what point did they start suing the government and start petitioning the FCC to regulate in favor of community standards?
That's already there. That's part of this.
Yeah.
They have the ability to complain about pricing, and then it triggers basically a council to form and then check if they're being charged too much, if their service is too poor, if it's violating, I'm sure it'll fall under violating standards. It's not set up for that yet, but inevitably now that it's under Title II.
We'll know when they finally release the 300 pages.
That isn't written yet.
That may come out tomorrow, maybe.
Do you think they'll include federal subsidies and you still get a federal subsidy if you're on a state-run exchange? Oh, wait, that's healthcare law.
Yeah. Well, what we'll do is we'll have tax credits and subsidies,
Yeah.
and everybody will have to repay the tax credit because they changed their income level since the time that they first signed up for internet. Oh, wait, never mind.
Yeah. And if you're one of those social justice liberals that wears the black frame glasses and ironic T-shirts and skinny jeans,
I'm right here, asshole.
I am
That's
glad
what
that
you-
I am not wearing my black frame glasses tonight.
not those black frame glasses.
No, the other one, the ones that I was wearing the other
They're
day.
not like that. No, that's not what I'm talking about.
Yeah, we know.
The Mad Owl glasses that Vibert wears. Don't even begin to talk about it's about keeping the internet open and free. It is not. Because your interpretation of open and free is that somehow freedom needs help to a level for you to be able to blossom from that level of freedom. It has nothing to do with that. The entire reason net neutrality even became an issue was last mile, was so that people could get it that were in rural areas and get access. That didn't make it. That is not included in this. The only one good thing about this at all is that in North Carolina and Tennessee, it broke up basically little cartels of small providers, and this supersedes that, so they can no longer divvy up the state and have their little area that's protected. But it's just going to be bigger cartels.
What's great is there's a big cartel that prevents me from being able to choose who my internet service provider is by the type that I want. I want broadband that's tied into my cable. I cannot choose anyone other than a certain service provider. Not that I would want to choose the other major player in the city, but
Now, though,
Yeah,
your data is all delivered the same. Do you feel free?
That cartel that you're talking about, I hate Comcast too.
That's not who I have.
Bright House.
I hate Bright House. I hate.
I had Comcast.
You know who Brett liked was Southern Bell, Southwestern Bell.
Hey,
They were gentlemanly.
Wametco Cable. When I was growing up, and Jeffrey knows exactly who I'm talking about because we have some. Our paths have crossed, not necessarily at the same time, but we both spent some time in another state, another city, and he remembers Wametco. But
Yes.
that was terrific. I loved them. I wish we could go back.
Well, you get nostalgic about cable just in general. I just would like to be able to turn on the television and find out what the weather is without being inundated with climate propaganda.
thunder snow! Thunder snow!
I refuse to call a winter storm a name.
Right.
Weather Channel, bite my ass. I'm not doing it. Okay?
You know, the
Winter
Weather Channel
storm,
is
it's
based
not-
in Atlanta.
Yes, they are. There's Atlanta is its own thing. When it comes to a couple things that come to mind. When will we start being taxed to maintain the infrastructure for our internet service providers?
They
like
were
we
very
see?
adamment. There were no fees or rate regulations.
It's already, yeah.
Okay,
please.
we'll see it.
Sure.
Give that another decade or
Yep.
so. And
Look at all those cram fees on your cell phone.
It'll be
and
a
tell me
1%
that's
income
not gonna
tax
happen
forever.
on your-
And I have to hope that this will spur some alternatives.
They killed.
Whether it be Morse code on a voodoo station or something, because if this is the way it's going to go, people are going to find ways to deliver data through other means.
So 4 years ago, there was a individual. His last name was Harbinger. He owned a hedge fund called Harbinger Capital that was developing satellite delivered wireless internet. He had it. He had the satellite. He had it up. All of a sudden, Verizon and AT&T team up. It messes with the airwaves that it had never messed with before in the history of their testing. Gets declined, bankrupts the company. He loses all $4.6 billion inside the hedge fund he had spent developing this technology. That is what's going to happen. It's already happened. The thing that might win is in Brooklyn, there's a big movement of peer-to-peer technology for wireless networks. That could work. But then you're going to get cracked down on it. It'll be like you see it all the time. The kids that go out and shovel snow and aren't licensed, like it will be cracked down on. You need to apply for a fee. Community-based, local-based internetworks.
Well, and that kind of leads to another thing. We mentioned licensing earlier. I would not be surprised to be a tech startup if it requires FCC licensing in the not-too-distant future.
That'd be interesting.
Can you
Basically,
imagine
since you're getting a business license?
Because even in a radio station situation, as Spangle and I were talking about earlier, although to be an on-air person, you do not need to have a license. There still has to be a license holder, a couple of different license capacities at a radio station, and I would not be surprised at all. Basically, it's like, okay, so when your little startup, when your media provider screws up, who's paying the bill?
You're going to have to be bonded for sure. No doubt. You're going to have to be bonded.
I mean, we were talking a little bit about a business idea that I have that applies to homeschooling. And
yes, let me explain to you, listeners, everything in great detail about this idea right now. So here's what
it's like Reddit for your ears.
But the thing that we won't go into detail, but Chris brought up insurance. Insurance to throw some stuff out online? What the hell happened?
Public resource.
Yes. Sorry, bro.
You could damage someone's sensibilities.
You tech blocked me.
You want to shape young minds? Insurance. All right. Other thoughts on net neutrality, because we are all hungry and tired, and we have a lot to talk about. We have to fix education tonight, and we have like an hour to do it, guys. I expect it all to be fixed by the time we leave, or none of you get to eat.
Honestly, I thought what Greg posted back in November was phenomenal. It laid it out, maybe a little bit longer than my "Do you want the regulatory agency that spent 12 years in court fighting about Janet Jackson?" But I mean, he lays out exactly what it's going to do.
And it's one of those things like, don't use that to defend it though, because it's not there yet. But that's where it's going to go. Right. That's where we're headed. The whole point was that if they had passed this in 1999, it'd be on your Nokia phone. You'd be paying cash at Starbucks. There wouldn't be a Wi-Fi network.
Would I still have my 8290?
Yep, and that's exactly what it was. And then you would be updating your AIM status, and your friends would know you're there.
Blockbuster would still be here.
Think of the jobs.
And
that's where this is going to go.
And Family Video would not be the juggernaut of video rentals that they are.
Have you ever noticed, sorry, I was getting water. Have you ever noticed that Family Video is always hiring managers?
Yes.
Like every time I drive, the Family Video, I don't know if you have it in your area, dear listener, but Dear Leader has it in his. And it's this video chain, and they are constantly hiring. They're like aggressively hiring 500 managers right now.
I'm pretty sure they've expanded globally at this point, the way they're hiring. That's what the
they
sign
hire
says.
like 500 new managers every 3 weeks.
And
it's like Enterprise. It's a manager and training program.
Call me crazy. I'm just guessing that the workforce that chooses to work at a video store is not necessarily the most reliable. So turnover is a problem.
Quentin Tarantino.
Yeah.
Kevin Smith. God love Kevin Smith.
They're all waiting to put their...
If video stores were like Clerks, I'd still go.
Yeah.
Like if that was the environment,
I would.
Or a Tarantino film, it was that kind of
very
madness,
entertaining.
I'd go.
At least if you could buy a bong like a record store, that might have been the savior as well.
All right. So should we move on to education?
Sure. It's all about the kids.
Yeah, we got to make sure we fix education tonight.
So,
all of it.
Again, I'm not going to force any of you to order a pizza until we fixed education. So, Jeffrey, give us your background
My background is somewhat unique when it comes to many educators. I worked in a couple of very competitive fields, broadcasting and theater craft, stagecraft, before entering the field of education. From the very get-go, I considered myself an interloper in the field.
Right. Typical libertarian trait. Sort of fitting somewhere, never really fitting in anywhere.
Well, as we were talking, I was talking to a couple of entrepreneurs last night, and the term "unemployable" might be appropriate.
Yeah.
But in any case, so I come from a competitive background. I decided to get into education not to make money, because if you go into education to make money, you are an idiot. But I really went into it,
or you can play the game really well.
Yeah, I went into it with the more noble idea of affecting change in education, and as much as anything, being a representative of some differing perspectives. Flash forward a few years, I will say, and I don't want to identify my school, but the school that I work for is a charter. We are atypical. We do not follow the conventional brick-and-mortar outline, and I love my school. I love what I get to do on a daily basis with my students, and I know that I am affecting a lot of the changes that I want to. I will also tell you that the trends and the monolithic nature of what's going on in education is gut-wrenching, beyond reason. It's a madhouse. Let me rant for just a moment. If you got kids in a government school today, pull them out. Pull the plug on this monstrosity. Burn down your local school.
Okay, hey. Whoa.
I told you.
That's
you
first strike force.
You wanted to give me an alias.
Theoretically. You do that again, and I'm saying your real name, okay? No, we know you're joking.
Yes, I do say that in jest, but I am sounding the alarm. If you think that what we have is workable, if you think it is the ideal of what you grew up with, if you think that this is something that can be fixed, you're mistaken.
Well, and here's the way that I look at education and have for a while. Do we really think that the best delivery system is one that is based around the number of people who were born within a 12-month period that all live in the same zip code? Are they all going to have the same needs? Are they all going to develop in the same way? That's like punishing Chris because he hasn't grown a beard and he's 30 years old and he can't grow one.
I could kind of piece one together, sir. Thank you.
But you have somebody like Greg or myself who can grow a full beard in a couple weeks.
But
it's all about development.
You two are vaguely ethnic. You're swarthy, okay?
Get off my land, bro.
But in all seriousness, you're taking this idea that because everybody was born in the same 12-month period and they all live in the same area, that they're all going to have the same needs, desires, outcomes, and dreams. And you crush all of that when you try to put them in that box. And that box is one where we are taking a one-size-fits-all approach. And we're doing this at the federal level. We're doing it at the state level. We're even doing it at the county and municipal levels. There is some innovation, I will tell you. However, 99% of what we're seeing in government education is something that is not workable and is all based on that one-size-fits-all model where they aim for the middle and they end up hitting the bottom of the target.
The term that is used in education and is kind of a classic idea is that government education is the great equalizer. And even when, once upon a time when this Prussian model was more effective at creating workers and the occasional professional, even at that,
the Ubermensch that rose out of the industrial
the
era,
occasional exceptional individual who would rise out of the masses who were creating the machinery of the day. But in any case, when you see this that model fading, the best and brightest didn't go to that. They went to the private school. They went to the parochial school, and that's where our leaders have come from. Today, the best and brightest are not coming out of your government schools, period.
Well, where do the president's daughters go to school?
Yep.
In D.C.?
Not the charter schools.
It certainly isn't a
down.
charter school. It certainly isn't the government schools that are there. They go to a very elite academy to ensure that they have the best education provided for them.
Yeah, but Brett, that's different. He's a member of the ruling class. We're just,
Regular people.
Hey, as somebody who spent a very brief time in there as part of the ruling class, it's really not that great.
You probably went to the Buckhead Academy, I would guess.
No, Brett was executive director of the Libertarian Party of Georgia. It doesn't get much more prestigious than being an executive director of a Libertarian Party's state organization, okay?
Yeah,
I'm
Chris
just
knows.
saying.
That's true.
I
You
know.
guys are libertarian royalty.
We are like Libertarian 1%.
Spangle is widely known as the king of the
No,
Libertarians.
the president of all Libertarians.
Dear leader.
I thought they gave you actually a royal title.
No, it was
We had
Gilbert.
him knighted,
Dear
but
leader,
it didn't
yeah.
stick.
So Greg, I was joking when I said somebody needs to order a pizza, and Greg's like, no, let's order a pizza.
Well, I was going to say, why not? If
Hey,
people are hungry.
let's do it. What do you guys want? Pepperoni? What do you like?
Just make it easy.
Mushrooms?
I'm sausage, pepperoni, and mushroom is the pie for me.
What are you?
Pepperoni,
Perfect.
just make it easy.
All right, carry it for 5 minutes. I'll be back.
Sounds good. So there are. I think we generally know as libertarians the problem with education. We've experienced a lot of it. We all understand education was designed by the people who, in the age of the Industrial Revolution, as everybody came out of the agrarian society, even in Indiana, in an agrarian, a formerly heavily agrarian society, we still have many different things that we're holding on to that still support.
You mean like the school calendar?
The school calendar is a great example. The summers off. We really, my cousins lived in North Carolina and went to school year round, and my aunt was always like, "It's such a better system because what happens." And they talked about this in Outliers by Malcolm Gladwell, kind of famously. With year-round schooling, you keep your schooling up, you keep your mind engaged, you keep learning, and so why do poor kids in urban areas lose more information over the summer than the middle class, upper class white kids?
One of the things that I saw when I served on the school board, in part of the ward that I represented, there were kids that, in the room that I'm in right now, there are hundreds of books on a bookshelf.
Right.
There are probably 100 books for each one of us in the room if we wanted to. But when you're looking at those kids and those families, it was like 15 kids per book.
Wow.
In their homes, I mean. I'm not
Sure.
talking about in the schools. I'm not talking about the resources that are available there. I'm talking about what they went home to for Christmas break.
Okay.
There was nothing for them to engage their mind.
Right.
That 2 weeks, that 3 weeks. The summer is even worse. That was one of the reasons that I made such a point to go and have a book drive.
Mm-hmm.
The
Pulling
concept,
things out of my pocket, paying for these things out of my pocket to make sure that these kids are going home with something that they can continue to engage.
So what happened? So he's talking about my house. I have a lot of books. And there's bookshelves in the bedroom. I mean, I love books. We've talked about that a couple episodes ago. So if I have a kid, they're always surrounded by books. I listen to a lot of podcasts. I, watch documentaries. I mean, if I had a kid, they would constantly be, there'd be some sort of learning environment taking place. Outliers and the study that kind of produced that chapter of that book found that middle-class parents take the time to take their kids to museums. This isn't a white or black thing. It's middle and lower class. Middle-class parents, upper-class parents, take them to art exhibits, the zoo, libraries, buy them books, take them to educational opportunities, whereas urban kids don't have those same opportunities because they're single-parent homes.
And they're struggling to make ends meet.
Exactly
honestly.
right, yeah.
well, and I think this is something. The concept of generational poverty is what we really get into, and I can speak from my own family that I know the same household produced remarkably independent producers, and has also produced 3 generations of people who have no concept of independence and self-sufficiency.
Right.
So the issues of generational poverty are very real when it comes to educators and what happens in the schools. Models that you talk about with year-round schooling. But where I was going with this is, forget about education. Forget about the state educating your students. We've gotten to a point where many households, if it were not for school, the kids do not eat.
Yes.
And when we've gotten to a point where it's acceptable to have a child because you can send them to the school for 10 months out of the year and they're going to at least get a breakfast and a lunch.
Well, and we saw that when we had recent school closures here in the Indianapolis area. We saw that there were schools that opened solely for the purpose of providing a meal to those kids if they could get there.
Now, I'm as staunch a libertarian as they come, and it's one of those things that I believe that the individual should be responsible. But I also know, in my instance, that I have students who go hungry at night, and I'm willing to take the money out of my pocket to put food in their mouths, and I really don't have a problem with that. But it just blows my mind, and it is heartbreaking, and it's not the kid's fault; it's the parents.
For sure. But that speaks to greater socioeconomic concerns, which is kind of what we've talked about. The other, so as we moved into the Industrial Revolution, the industrialists said, as we moved out of the Industrial Revolution along the wars, the Great Wars, how do we better prepare our workforce? And so the economy was much different 100 years ago in the Industrial Revolution and then in the 60s, and then now the entire economy, everything is totally different. The idea that we spent discussing before we started this podcast, it's, all the careers, because generally we meet before and kind of hang out and talk about what's going on in our lives. Everything that we talked about today in our careers is all tech-based. And we kept saying to each other, have you checked out that lynda.com thing? Have you checked out the codeacademy.com? Have you checked out this YouTube on how to do this? And so the nature of work has greatly differed. And 100 years ago, industrialists and job creators said, memorization, standardization, we need conformity. We need people who, and now what we need is creativity. We don't need conformity. We don't need rote memorization. We need free thinkers.
Well, the reason that we don't need that anymore is we're 2 economies away from where we were when the current education model was put into place.
Right.
We have moved, as Chris pointed out, from an agrarian economy to an industrial economy, then we moved to a service economy, and now we're in an information economy. And that's where we need that creativity, but we're still training the workforce for the industrial economy, the manufacturing economy that no longer exists in the United States.
If you have children, it is more important for you to teach them programming and coding and information workflows and how to manage data, how to, start them on something like Evernote just to organize their homework, because that is going to be as key as anything else, as key as writing. Everything that I do, and now granted, I work in a radio, but I also do this. So I have always kind of existed in this weird world of radio and journalism and
freedom
and badassery, with a smidge of ninjaism and witchcraft.
Bacon,
but also there's always bacon, but also tech. Tech is going to be a very large part of what they do. So teach them coding. The argument that we have this argument every freaking General Assembly. Should we keep cursive in schools? I just cleaned out my office today at work. I have a stack of Post-it notes,
Chris,
that are in a drawer that I will never use. That is the only paper in my office.
Here's a concept that I think is lost on a lot of people, and this is kind of a big picture, but compared to the 1950s even, how much can you know today compared to the 1950s? How much media can you know? How many different skill sets can you pick up? Back then, you might go into a professional field. You need to learn how to read. You might have 3 television channels. Look how much information. So what I see in this classroom, and we mentioned this a little earlier, is there is very much so an educational industrial complex, and it is all-encompassing. Everybody has to know everything. It's not acceptable. We do not accept plumbers. socially in this country anymore.
Well, that's because everybody needs to go to college.
Everybody has to go to university.
We've
and
been hearing that for 30 years.
Well, so where I'm going with this is that when it comes down to so much, there's a disconnect between the academy and what's going on in the real world. When I talk to students, if somebody says that I'm part of a family business, we own a junkyard, my family are millionaires, I'm going to learn this business, I'm going to be working by the time I'm 16, and by the time I'm 18, I'm making twice as much as you are, Mr. Teacher Man. I'm supposed to look at me in the eye and say, well, you need to go to the university so you can learn business skills. That's bunk. That's what it is. It's a scam.
The whole idea, I mean, and we've talked about college, but college is bullshit. Sorry, and maybe it's just because of the field that I'm in. Now, we went and saw Larry.
I don't use my education.
No, what was your degree in?
Economics.
Okay. Maybe if you had gone to the Liberty Fund, we attended the speech by Larry Reed on the basics of Austrian economics at the Liberty Fund, and he is head of
co-sponsored by the Bastiat Society here in Indianapolis.
And we were in a room. We walk in, looking like a ragtag bunch of.
We were the 5 youngest people in the room.
We were, well, I mean, there were a lot of young people, but I was in tennis shoes, and everybody else was like in suits. Apparently, if you work at a think tank, you have to dress up to think.
You ever feel like the world's a tuxedo and you're a pair of brown shoes?
Yeah.
I love showing up for those 5 p.m. mixers, and I work for a living. And you got the people who obviously work in offices, and then there's people like me who paint sets from time to time,
right?
And show up in ragtag clothes. And I used to care, but I'm at a point where no, I just don't give a damn
me
anymore.
Neither. I will look appropriate, but I will not. I will not look inappropriate. Let me put it that way.
Well, even that whole business style.
Yeah, but those people, the whole concept of dress at work has totally changed. I mean,
Mark Cuban once said, "You want to give your employees a 10% raise? Make it business casual."
Right.
All the expenses from dry cleaning, dressing the part of the businessman.
Yep. I mean, you work at a mortgage bank.
Yeah.
You work at an ad agency. You're wearing
I wear jeans and pullover, so I don't believe in coats.
99% of the time, I am too. I just had a meeting after work where jeans were not allowed at the
Republican
venue.
Club.
Right. So yeah. Basically, my point was, what was I talking about?
You're talking about the college degree and its value, and then carrying that forward.
If you're going to work at a think tank, then academia is valued and needed, and I got a lot out of college because it was the first time that I went from high school where we memorized everything, where it was all about how much can you memorize and how much can you spit out on a standardized test, into college where for the first time I was challenged to think critically. I was challenged to be creative. I was challenged to stretch my mind in a totally different way.
No, that can't be right, Chris. Every university and college in the United States is a bastion of liberalism.
Oh, that's true.
Neoliberalism,
I went to IUPUI, so it's sort of like college light. So,
but weren't you history?
History with a communication minor.
Their history department's killer.
I didn't really make it to
Liberal
a lot
arts killer there.
I have a lot of time left to finish before I get my degree. I left to go work at the radio station, but I don't think there's anybody who would sit there and call me dumb. I'm not necessarily
you know how many kids in your history class would die for your job right now?
Sure. I mean, every job I've ever worked has always been my dream job, and it is because I pursued the career path instead of sticking to what the education system told me to stick to.
Right. You gained the skills that you needed for the next step.
And that's the
exactly
key,
right.
In my opinion, skill acquisition, and that's the way that
and looking
developing.
at the future and making sure that you're going to be ready for that. Because so many people are willing to sit back and do the memorization and standardization, and then they get out into the real world, and it's not like that.
Right.
There's nothing to memorize when you're at the cutting edge.
Yeah.
Right.
You have to
the
make
only
a
thing that
decision.
you might be able to use those skills for is, memorizing the keypad on the touchscreen at McDonald's, because that's the only job that you're going to be able to really perform well with the education that you've been given.
So when I woke up earlier, I woke up from a nap. And I was abruptly woken up, and I let Jeffrey into the house.
And I had to see you in your bathrobe.
Oh,
and I cannot unsee that.
Yeah.
Man.
Was it tie-dye?
There are some things that cannot be unseen.
That's true.
I was in a robe. It's not the sexiest way I've ever opened.
I'm picturing like Christopher Walken in the Continental on old Saturday Night Live. Champagne.
It was
It was
Jeffrey, would
almost
you
like
some champagne?
Chris, I thought we had a thing. I didn't know it was going to be this kind of thing.
The fire's going, Jeffrey.
It was tight. It was tightly closed, and I looked more like Christopher Lloyd in Back to the Future more than like
Brown.
Christopher Walken.
Good old Doc Brown.
But when he came in and sat down and we started talking, I really needed like another 5-10 minutes to kind of wake up to life. And like that's sort of what college does. I think in a lot of ways it kind of gives you that time to adjust to being an adult. You're still kind of connected to your parents. You're still in kind of a structured environment. You start to unwind some of what you did or did not learn in college.
High school.
And you can, but for me, I kind of hit this point where I didn't necessarily need college for what I was going to do. I wouldn't recommend college. If you're going to be a web director for a national radio show, first of all,
there's no major for that.
My path is a fluke. And so it was constant. Right now, at this point, our show is going to last for a long while. I am starting to work on skills that I'm going to apply to my next job. And because I jumped into the workforce about 3 or 4 years before everybody else, I got a head start to get ahead of everybody else because I was career-minded. And I think you have to have a bit of that entrepreneurial spirit in this day and age, and we don't teach entrepreneurial spirit in the current education system.
We teach the exact opposite.
Exactly right.
The exact opposite.
Yeah, it's all about conformity. One of the things to understand about education, and I'm very disappointed, and I have no problem calling out the Academy of Education, because when you look at the history of what it is nothing but reform on reform on reform. The very standardized testing that most teachers are balking about and going crazy over right now, it originated within the academy. That's where it started. You go back a few years, it was multicultural education and a pluralistic society.
Diversity programs.
The diversity programs. You go back a few years before that, it was new math. It was sight reading. And it has been failure upon failure upon failure. And it's time that we hold the academy accountable. And if that means that teachers no longer are stewards of education, so be it.
Yeah, they should be teachers.
Well,
that know how to reach their kids and develop them, but they don't allow you to do that.
Well, one of the things, and this will not endear me to many of my fellow teachers, I have never found a group of people, and again, I've worked in a couple of fields that happen to be very competitive. I've never come across a group of people so willing to compromise their principles in order to keep a damn job.
Well, when you look at it, it is kind of a cushy job.
It is.
Used to be.
No, you work 200 days a year.
There are
as
special
opposed
things
to
about my
240.
job, and that's one of the things that is one of the things that drew me to it. One of the things I find too when I talk to other teachers, and this is a very practical thing, it is matriarchal to the point of exclusion, but also when I talk to the people who stick it out for 20, 30 years, they aren't the primary breadwinners in the household. That's kind of where I'm at right now. Is I love my job and I love what I do, and I know that I'm making the differences that I want to, but I can't make this chump change for 20 and 30 years. Now, if you're a second income in a household,
well, but the key for you is not the accountability that you have to prove that you're providing a quality education to your students. It's about you getting another degree and another degree and another degree. So you get your bachelor's, then you get your master's, then you get your doctorate, then you get your specialist. And that's how you work your way up the pay scale. And as you do that, then opportunities open for you. But it's continuing the cycle of education for the adult as you continue to try to communicate.
The term lifelong learner is something that we're supposed to be promoting very strongly right now. And I feel that all I'm really doing is ensuring a payroll for the professors who
the
are
complex.
Yeah, for the industrial education complex.
And to further that, we have a lot of lifelong learners, but people our age are not going back to school because they want to learn necessarily. They're going back because they want to defer paying their massive student loan bills more, and they're also getting tax breaks. And so more education and piling on more debt to delay paying debt instead of actually having the desire to learn because it's so expensive to go to college. Even
Ivy
Tech
right now, if you draw it out, that maybe if I can draw out this debt for another couple of years, somebody's going to give me amnesty. Somebody's going to pay off the debt.
The Corinthians 15.
I'm rolling them dice, buddy.
The Corinthians 15. It may not be a news story you guys are aware of yet. It's in California.
No.
They went to a for-profit university, Corinthian University, 15 individuals. They were left in limbo because the university was selling itself to, it's a for-profit, so it sold itself to another university. They weren't sure the status of their student loans, whether they still owed them. They have formed, with the help of some Occupy Wall Street attorneys, they have been able to, as of right now, not have to pay them back. You want to talk about a perverse incentive. It'll never happen within the public universities. That'll never happen. But if it's the for-profit colleges collapse, that eliminates a huge debt overhang. Now, it kills all those companies, and you should just start shorting their stocks. Phoenix, DeVry, Strayer, short the heck out of it. This is like Bear Stearns if you want to make a ton of money, or mortgage-backed securities in 2007. But if this goes through, and this is the standard, it's just in California, the Corinthians 15, this will change everything because every for-profit college that's in a strip mall in America will no longer be eligible for federally subsidized student loans, and their students won't be required to pay them back.
Well, and I think a lot of the drive for university education, whether it be for private or even state-level schools, goes back to what you're talking about. This is a corruptible system to the core.
All the incentives are aligned to, like the for-profit colleges, max them out, kids that shouldn't go. Make sure you don't care if they graduate, you just want to get them in so they can get eligible.
Well, because then you collect the tuition that they're paying for with student loans.
Which the government backs and pays to the bank that was willing to lend it to them. Or the government now themselves. And that's, yes, that was my question to Larry Reed at the Liberty Fund the other night, was right now we're at a stage where it's not like crowding out in economics, but what's happening is the young kids that have a high propensity to start businesses aren't because of the debt overhang from college. They can't do it. They can't take the risk because they carry the student loans forward.
Well, and their credit is showing that they have all this massive student loan debt, so they're not able to qualify for some of the startup capital via loans they would be able to get.
Like, because a lot of people started them on credit cards.
Buy a car to get to that first job that's not going to pay enough to pay off the student loans.
Yep. What do you mean? There's buses everywhere.
Yeah.
Equally available, free and open busing.
That's right.
Boy, I think it would take me about I think I calculated it out at 17 times as long to get to work. I live 4 miles away from my office, and it would take me 17 times as long if I were to rely on
That's why we need
buses.
Indy Connect, which will build a massive public transit system of light rail.
Perfect.
Yeah.
I'm going with the futurist version of public transportation.
Driverless
Vacuum
cars?
tubes.
The Hyperloop.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Throw me in a tube.
Elon Musk is working on that.
A man-
Hyperloop.
a man
We're
who's a
almost
time
there.
traveler.
A man who took one college course and then dropped out.
No, he got his bachelor's. He
Oh,
dropped
did he?
out of his
Okay.
master's in physics at Stanford.
got
You guys bring up Elon Musk, and I think that's actually, if I could do a little compare and contrast, one of the things that I'm a real firm believer in is that the university system's days are numbered by the institution's function in itself. New technology is coming out at a rapid pace. Even old industries like the arts are changing rapidly as new technology and new ways to train and new ways to express yourself come out. The formula for developing a new course at the university level is about a 4-year circle. From the time of an inception, curriculum development,
department
review, department approval, back and forth it goes until it finally becomes a class. You look at what happens in IT and some of the sites that you talked about. That's kind of news to me, but I've seen this coming for years.
Oh, yeah.
We see that in order to get a job to be an IT professional, you don't have to have a diploma. You don't have to have a certificate. You bring a series of certifications.
You need to be able to show your work when you walk in. I built this.
Yeah,
And
you
I
have
think
to have
that
a
is a
portfolio.
viable model even for secondary education in the United States. Forget
it's in
about
Germany,
your GED.
the apprenticeship system.
Yeah, if you align with a firm when you're 14 or 15, you start going there at 2 o'clock.
I don't
in the
love the
afternoon.
state subsidy, but like that, you acquire those initial skill sets. They see your track record. They see what you can do.
Well, and you're also seeing some of the innovation that's coming to meet that upcoming need. You have things like Praxis, which is a fantastic way to get out of the Leviathan. I had the opportunity to spend some time when I was in D.C. At the International Students for Liberty Conference talking to the Praxis guys because their table was right next to mine. And it was an eye-opening experience because they're showing people how to have real-world skills in a fraction of the time that it takes to get a college degree, and they're already working the day that they start.
Oh, if you get in Code Academy, out in Silicon Valley, and then now they're franchising, and you're seeing pop up everywhere. Yeah. You get in one of those, it's 12 weeks, it's intense, it's hard as can be. I think it's $10,000, and it includes housing. You're coming out at $75 as a junior web developer.
Yeah, I could more than double my money by going to one of those.
Yep.
So would you all agree that the goal of education is to build a productive member of society that prepares them to be
a great taxpayer?
A great taxpayer.
No.
No. What is the goal of education then? Because in some ways, the goal of education is to build a worker, a person who can succeed.
That's
and
the government's
build something.
idea of education.
Okay.
Or, for instance,
that's
our
the current
economic
state
structure.
of education today.
If I could
but that's what I want out of an education. I want an education that will prepare me to be successful in my career, which will help me be successful in life.
Let me get crunchy granola here, and I'll qualify this. This is kind of me being a child of the 70s, and I use terms like aptitude that are no longer used anymore. But I think self-realization with a metric of self-sufficiency should be the goal of education. Frankly, there are people who will not be able to achieve self-sufficiency. And for those individuals...
It's the hardcore unemployed.
Yeah, it's the hardcore unemployed, and I don't have a problem for some kind of accommodation for them. But I do want to know that they have been given the opportunity to realize every potential that they can. As an educator, this is what frustrates me so many times nowadays. Everybody has to be great at math. Or everybody has to be able to write full essays. How about the science
or
kid?
Both?
You really need to be able to do both to do well on the standardized test, and that's the goal nowadays. What about the kid who's brilliant in science but is socially awkward and has trouble expressing themselves verbally? We're training them to hate education because they can't be this uber ideal student.
Well, it's because we have one test. We have one test model, and we have giraffes that are trying to climb trees when the test is clearly designed for monkeys to climb trees. But everybody takes the same test. Not everybody has the same capability and the same development.
A common core for a common person, and I don't know a common person.
Well, I know some. They hang out at the Columbia Club on Thursday nights. No, I'm just kidding. No, it's really difficult though because for me, I see there is value in a. So right now, holding knowledge in your head could never be less valuable. There's absolutely no value any longer of rote memorization unless it's something where you're applying a algorithm in order to solve a problem. But as far as memorizing history, as far as memorizing those things, the internet has almost eliminated, not completely, but I mean to an extent, it's eliminated that because it makes resourcefulness way more important than it does, and the ability to find that information quickly than having it immediately available.
And that is one of the things that the contemporary student is very aware of and very frustrated by.
Right. They know that they can go to Google and find the answer. They know that they can put in a calculation in Wolfram Alpha and they'll have the answer.
So
and
your
that's
job,
not going to help them any. You're just answering the question that the teacher wants you to answer. When the teacher could be instead showing you how to find those resources and how to make the tools that we have available to us work for us.
So yeah, your job is to develop them into resourceful individuals that are self-sufficient. And that goes back to being like an autodidact, a self-learner. And so that you make yourself eventually in time irrelevant. I mean, you're always the teacher, the mentor that brings them back and puts them on the right course.
Well, and this is one of the things that I can tell you amongst the education community, this is terrifying discussion. Because what this comes down to is that I might have to be willing to accept, for example, my forte is George Washington. I can sit here and I can give you a lecture on George Washington. I can produce interactive tutorials. I can do a lot with George Washington. You want me to talk about, the robber barons? I can do it, but I'm not that strong at it. So let's do this. I'm going to put together my module, and I'm going to put it out there in a public venue where everybody can access it. But when it comes time for me to guide my class through the robber barons, I'm going to go to Brett's program.
Teachers helping teachers.
Teachers helping teachers.
Yep.
And that concept is terrifying people because it's not only a question of autonomy, but it's also a question of not having to be a generalist.
That's the scariest thing in the world.
Yeah, and the education establishment, and I feel horrible for these folks who have been career teachers, but you know what? I left high school. I thought I was going to be in radio. I thought that was going to last forever and a day, and it lasted about 2 years until the industry changed. There was deregulation, the technology changed, and all these things changed. Well, and the world eventually will be better for it, I'd like to think. So I think that the education establishment really needs to be more responsive, and they aren't. They
Well,
don't
it's
seem to
the
be getting
existing
it.
infrastructure that makes it so difficult. It's like switching, for instance, to compare, it would be like switching to hydrogen from gasoline.
Yeah.
The existing infrastructure hangs over and is such a disruption and has real human costs that the displacement would cause maybe such social unrest. It has to be handled slowly.
And I think you point to a good thing. The concept, you got to remember, for a lot of folks, the very concept of the Prussian model is all they know. The comprehensive Cold War school, you go first grade through 12, you're going to learn what the state tells you to learn. It's going to serve as a babysitter, basically. Make sure you don't get into trouble. The concept of a child being given basic tools, reading, writing, math, maybe through the 4th, the 6th grade, they go to a conventional school, and then they are presented with a wide and vast array of options. That kind of freedom terrifies people, especially in the education
The other
establishment.
thing that terrifies people is something like the Carpe Diem model, where you're moving at your own pace.
The unschool.
Yeah.
Or
No, this is just a model of charter school that I've seen where, and I've actually been a part of an earlier iteration when I went to private school in elementary and early middle, where I moved at my own pace. If I was at and I'm only using the vernacular to give you the idea, but if I was in 5th grade, if I was at a 9th grade level science, and a 7th grade level math and a 5th grade level reading, and I could move through that, and I could move through it at my own pace, and I went through that. It happened. Carpe Diem has modernized it and made it an entire model of education. It's a fantastic option. And it's probably the best way that from a public school, government school perspective that you can deliver education to the masses in a way that isn't
Customizable.
detrimental. Yeah. That isn't detrimental.
we can get anything we want right now in this era customized,
Yeah.
except one thing. And for the most part, public education is the closest thing we have to a national religion in the United States.
It is all about indoctrination.
Yeah.
There are two areas where the government has not disrupted and completely broken apart everything, although those cracks are starting to happen. That is education and government. And you see, sorry, my cat, I never sit down.
See, this
at
is
home.
why you got to have government schools, though, because that cat, if it had gone to a government school and been
Would be
trained
conforming
properly,
by sitting on the couch next
Yep.
to him, participating in the conversation.
so maybe we should just scrap this whole episode.
She's just all over me and distracting me. But I think we're starting to see the cracks. The internet age, the internet, as I said on Facebook today on the We Are Libertarians page, the internet is a virus that the state cannot cure. And it will.
It's trying.
It is trying, and it will never succeed. The greatest danger, I think, as Elon Musk has pointed out, Ray Kurzweil has done great research on singularity. The danger is technology itself. It is
Which is really just the democratization of information.
right. Technology building its own intelligence, and then that kind of futuristic taking over. How far is too far? In the intelligence of machines. But
And the economy shifts then at that point. Imagine we all have access to all the same information all the time. And this is where I think liberal arts education really is beneficial if it teaches you how to critically think and take something and mash it up into something new. Because we kind of learn through metaphor, right? Like, oh, this is just like that in this, silo.
One of the things I would maybe not so much disagree with, but I feel like that we are becoming disconnected from a natural learning style, and not so much that I think that there are going to be people who respond to the model that you that we're talking about, which is basically technology. But right now, we don't have a model that puts people in touch with the land, that puts people in touch with machinery.
Working with your hands.
How many kids know how to change a tire anymore? So as much as, yes, we can look to technology, I think we also kind of need to take a step back and don't be afraid to get our hands dirty. I'm running into a little situation in my class. I had a cheating epidemic. Okay, it was very obvious that a couple, 3 answers got out, and my students were looking up answers for a test online. When I discussed the situation with my students, and a lot of really good students succumbed to this temptation, what it came down to is the students were so afraid of failure. They would compromise their principles. They would do things that they knew to be wrong because they have become so accustomed to praise and being this perfect image.
Feeling of failure is way bigger of a motivator than potential gain.
I'm so proud of my failures.
That's the only way you learn.
That's how I'm here.
It's the way that I learned.
I had the biggest personal failure of my entire life, and it completely disrupted and changed the course of so much of my life, and I am so much better for it.
Don't you wish you'd failed earlier?
In that case, maybe.
Yeah.
Well, for a young person these days, and again, this kind of goes back to, well, all students have to be this particular model. We're teaching that you can't fail, and if you do fail,
we're judging you.
Yeah, we're going to judge you, and it's not an opportunity to pick yourself up or maybe determine some aptitudes and move on. Failure is something to be avoided at any cost.
One of the failures of this whole entire system, the Friedman Foundation, Robert Enlow spoke to AFF. We have Greg, Brett, Tim McGuire, and I, and Dustin Sharpless all have started a chapter of America's Future Foundation here in Indianapolis. And our first speaker was Robert Enlow. And look that up on Facebook. Are we on their website yet? I think we are. Yeah, we are. Yeah, we are. I looked it up the other day. So check out America's Future Foundation. See if there's a chapter in your area.
That's americasfuture.org.
Okay, cool. And he was our first guest, and he talked about education reform. And the Friedman Foundation was started by Milton and Rose Friedman?
Yes.
Yeah, Rose Friedman. And, Enlow, he gave me a thought that I'd never had before. Because the government is so ingrained and so highly regulated and has laid out so much of what students learn and how things are supposed to operate, and the system is so entrenched because of unions and the culture, that when we talk about what the future looks like, we can't even imagine it.
Unless someone tells it.
Well, because the people who are in the system are spending so much time perpetuating the system or being pissed off at the system that they're not using that brain power to innovate because there's no opportunity to innovate. There's no reason to innovate.
There's no incentive or reward to innovate.
Exactly right.
Well, if you want to be an educator and you want to find a way to affect change and educate students outside of this government mandated monopoly, you're screwed.
Right.
I mean, you have to. That's one of the things that I'm facing right now is how do you make that happen outside of the control of the government?
What you have to leave the control of the government.
Yeah.
You have people like the Libertarian homeschooler who has 2 children that are very, very,
those kids are top notch,
very different. I've met them.
Oh yeah,
I know the family, and the young statesman learns very differently from the baby anarchist.
Yeah,
and they have completely different styles. They have completely different development plans.
Mm-hmm.
But they are part of the unschooling model. It's undoing all of the things that we have all pointed out are flaws in the system because they're actually spending their time learning about things that are going to be relevant for their lives going forward. And both Zeus and the Libertarian homeschooler, sorry, I have to remember what they call themselves because
this sounds like a Dungeons and Dragons game. Is this real?
No, it's totally real.
Are
Libertarian
you
homeschooler on
LARPing
Facebook
or something?
Yeah. Is this Lair?
But in all seriousness though, they've unplugged. They've done what they had to do to serve the needs of their kids, and I don't think that there are enough parents that are out there that would be willing to do that. I don't know that there are enough parents that are out there that one of them will stay home with the kids to ensure that they get every opportunity that they want to fulfilled, while the other parent works 3 jobs, has 2 side businesses, and provides for the family in a way that makes it possible for what they do.
Basically, they have a slavery that can support so their kids can get an education.
Yeah.
Brett, I'd kind of be curious to know, especially with your experience as a school board member.
Elected representative.
Got to love that. The argument that I hear time and time again, well, we preface this by saying if there's one single contributing factor to the success of a student that I have personally witnessed, it is parental involvement. I have yet to find a failing child who does not have a parent behind him.
I can tell you from my personal experience growing up as a kid who went to public school, who went to private school, who was homeschooled. We tried different public schools. We tried different private schools. We found programs that worked for me. That was how I found the earlier iterations of Carpe Diem. I went to, just off the top of my head, I can say 7 different schools as we tried to find what worked. And it was public, private, and home that was a mashup that really made it happen for me.
Okay, now here's where I was going with this, though. We know that, your parents were willing to go through those steps.
My mom.
Your mom. Okay. Now, I have students, not so much in my school, but at a previous brick-and-mortar setting, I had students whose parents would not come in and sign a paper to get them enrolled. And basically, they would drop them off at the curb. And
What do you mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's a free babysitter for 6 hours a day, 10 months out of the year.
So for those people who do not have the parents, and frankly in the culture that they're coming from, education is not valued. How do we provide opportunities?
Mentors. We need to have a community. It's not parental involvement, in my opinion. It's community involvement.
It's advocacy.
You need to have somebody who has a professional persona that can come in and can say, Greg, we have similar goals in life. And I want to make sure that you're here to achieve those goals. If your parents aren't going to do it, I'm going to step up and I'm going to help with that. And it may be that you see Greg twice a month, but during those 2 visits a month that you have an opportunity to see him, you're going to find things that are going to put him on the path to reach his goals that you figured out. You had similar goals at his age, but that is the way that you can get around the lack of parental involvement, is by having a community. And I hate that I have to use that word, community
Hillary
or society.
write a book about
what I'm saying
It takes
is
a child. Or no,
it takes a village.
It takes a child.
It does take a child, too, to be honest.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it's just a community, and then there's no children.
But you have to have people that are willing to make that sacrifice. You have to have people that do not have children that are willing to make that sacrifice. You need to have people who have been successful in the business world, who've been successful in a trade, who have been successful outside of education to really take that kid and put them on the right path.
My uncle is retired from Lilly, and my uncle was very, very formative for me. He's from Switzerland and is he gave me a passion for science. I think he was an engineer, and my grandfather was a chemist at Lilly. So I have, even though I am just fully, I love to write. I can't do science. I love science. I can't do it. He instilled in me this love of science and learning, and was very important to me when I was younger. And he retired from Lilly early, probably like 60, 62. And he's got like 20 years of life left, and he's like, listen, I have all this time. I don't do anything. I'm retired. I can't really go back to work. I could go back as a consultant, but then what's the point of being retired? There really is every avenue
We can't let him in the classroom, Chris.
Right.
You understand that, right?
Yeah.
You can't. There's no place for him in education.
And
because he's a chemist or he's an engineer, he doesn't have the specialized education training to be successful. One of the best college courses I ever had was by a guy who did not have a college degree. He was my marketing professor at the University of Georgia, and he did it as an adjunct professorship. But he was an amazing entrepreneur and had a vision with regard to marketing, and they saw those skills and forewent some of the...
Well, Steve Jobs couldn't teach digital product marketing at Stanford.
Right.
Or he couldn't have because he didn't graduate.
Well, I think, and my point with my uncle is, he said to me a million times, he's like, I think he must have benefited from kind of teaching me because his interest isn't in college. I've kind of drifted towards college. His interest is like, I could be a science tutor. I could go in and teach. I don't need a lot of money. $35,000 a year to me is like great because then that covers my insurance, and I don't need to worry about it. And there are gaps in the education system that I could fill, but I'm not being allowed to fill those because no one has thought of the idea to give me access to fulfilling the role that I would help with.
My undergraduate degree is in education, and by and large, I will tell you that the School of Education was kind of a joke. Mm-hmm. There are things that I am more effective at than people who do not have some instruction in education. Should that be a barrier to entering the profession? No, but
I learn it.
Yeah, and it's the kind of thing that could be learned. Could be you can learn through on the job.
They better like to learn. They're teaching education.
Well, I've also seen a lot of people who went through the School of Education, and this is the other side of this. A lot of people go through the School of Education and don't make it through student teaching, let alone showing up for and actually getting paid to ever teach a day.
And one of the other things that you see is most of the development that happens for a teacher is in their first 5 years on the job.
Yeah.
It's years 2 through 5. The first year, they're just getting a handle on things, what it's like to be in the classroom, what it's like to have the demands of the job. And then years 2 through 5 are their most innovative of their entire career. And after year 5, they figured out what they need to do to get from August to May.
Yeah.
So
yeah,
I think there's like huge, because all we've done is abandon what's natural. So everything you went through was abandoning the principles of early education, and it was a personal relationship, mentor involved in their life, helping that person learn life lessons and a philosophical worldview as well as the skills and the way to think. And right now, it's the complex that's the killer because it sucks up all the resources from getting to the teacher. Whereas if the teacher just collected the payment immediately, like in Greece, like the Lyceum, like Socrates, Plato, the Academy, all these things, it was 1-to-1. You were their life teacher. You brought them up, developed them, and they took the funds and they rented the facility if they even needed to, but it was mainly public grounds.
Wall University, where Maya is your life coach.
I'm scared.
I'm
scared.
Let Chris Spangle teach you how to succeed.
That's scarier.
At laying on a couch with Grace fuzzy slippers and a tie-dye T-shirt while a cat licks itself.
I think Maya should update George Washington's book on civility and gentleman manners.
Yeah.
2.0 for the modern era.
So I mentioned my opinion that the two institutions that the internet has not broken apart. Excuse me.
We're up about 40 minutes after Chris's bedtime.
That is literally true. It's 9:30. I like to go to bed at 9. I am starting to see education cracks. One of them is taking place here in Indiana currently, and I don't want to dwell too long on Indiana drama. But we have an education secretary that is elected by the people, got roughly the same amount of votes as Governor Mike Pence. And the supermajority House and supermajority Senate for the Republicans, along with the Republican governor, have worked to basically strip the education secretary of all of her powers. And
paid vacation.
Paid vacation, basically, yeah.
You forgot to mention the party that she's from.
Oh, yeah, she's a Democrat, by the way. We had
the only statewide elected Democrat,
right? And we had a guy named Tony Bennett who was an education reformer, did a lot of good things for school choice, but also had a few moral failings, not with women, but just with
Tony. I am very rare amongst educators. I liked Tony quite a bit. Tony made some bad moves along the way that it really cost him the election.
A lot more style than his substance. And, he ticked off teachers, and so teachers organized and said, I'm a teacher, I know how to educate kids, and if you love education, you'll get rid of this guy who's trying to fight the teachers' unions. And it worked. Mm-hmm. And so Ritz was elected. Ritz is never had administrative experience. She was a librarian, which
I thought she was a libertarian.
No.
Oh.
And
I'm kidding.
So,
a media specialist. Let's use the proper terminology.
Proper vernacular.
Domestic engineer.
So
media
the
specialist.
slam by the Republican supermajority is well, how could she be an administrator? She's just a librarian. As opposed to the guy who's now governor who's only ever been a talk radio show host and who is failing miserably at being an administrator of the Indiana state government. Mike Pence has been the biggest joke as a governor that we have ever had in the state. It is how he's going to run for president, I'll never know, because he probably won't get reelected governor because he's doing so poorly. He can't manage his own party. So
he owns the news. Well, he was going to own the news, now he doesn't own the news.
Good old Pravda on the Plains.
Yeah. So,
Otherwise, it was kind of brilliant. There'd have been no bad press that came out, and he
Yeah.
looked great. His genius strategy just didn't get pulled off right.
Well, it's because somebody leaked the idea before they were ready to present it, and they didn't have the optics that they needed.
Right. I didn't leak it. I wanted to. So if people want to think that I had something to do with that, then by all means.
Are you categorically denying that you have?
I categorically deny that I had anything to do with any government scandal over the last 70 years. Okay. So, Jeffrey, ISTEP is the Indiana State standardized test. So here's where I'd like to go. I'd like you to explain a little bit about the ISTEP kerfuffle here in Indiana. What's taking place? You like that word?
I love that word so much.
And then we're going to talk about the reliance on standardized testing. And a little bit about Common Core, what it is. And then we'll try to wrap up.
Wait, we don't have somebody that's hysterical that's going to talk about how this is tied into Agenda 21 and all of the things that the New World Order is bringing upon us. So
I didn't want to go full Illuminati, but if you want to go there.
All right. Well, as long as
Joe Ruiz is a Mason, and they're hiding Christ's body, and that's who control. Are you a Mason too? Where's Jesus? Where's Jesus' body? I saw Da Vinci Code.
On Jeffrey's right ring finger, he's got the Masonic symbol tattooed, and he's teaching your children.
That's right. I got hand tats, and I'm teaching kids.
So explain what's happening with Indiana testing.
Yeah, the ISTEP program for Indiana. It is our locally designed and enacted standardized test. You'll have similar versions throughout the rest of the country. Or variations thereof, we'll say. There's standardized testing throughout the country. God, I hope there's nothing quite like ISTEP anyplace else. In any case, what's going on this year?
Got to be worse.
Yeah, the state legislator demanded that it be updated and changed for 2015. The Department of Education, headed by Ritz, makes those changes, submits the changes to the Department of Education in Washington for approval. They are sent back and told to make changes. Those changes are enacted, sent back. Long and short of it is that at the end of the day, we don't find out about ISTEP details until about 6 weeks out from the first round of the test.
Nice. Wait, how long would you normally have?
Typically, we would at least have the blueprints and the plans 4 months out.
Well, the good news is there are going to be lots of teachers that are held accountable for these results that they only had 6 weeks to prepare for.
Well, and this is kind of the thing where, again, I sigh a little bit when I think about the community of teachers. Nobody, and this is something that people need to understand in the state of Indiana, nobody is taking this test serious. The students, the administrators, the teachers, it is so obviously the victim of ineptitude on the part of Ritz and on the part of our governor. It is so blatantly inept that nobody can take it serious. The only reason this is happening, only reason that this test is happening is so we can get the $200 million in federal voucher money.
Nice.
That's the only reason this is happening.
So that is... It just goes to show that when you elect incompetent people, you get incompetent results, and people are harmed. Children are harmed, education suffers, and there's pizza here.
There is.
So we're going to take a break through the magic of radio and enjoy a little bit of pizza courtesy of Greg Lenz, who ordered Jack's Pizza, where they put the meat under the cheese. I'm so excited.
Like the freedom under the internet.
The freedom under the internet.
It's the classic Indiana farmer's pie. I love it.
All right, so we will return right now. Well, that was delicious, Greg. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much,
It's from the Koch brothers.
I can tell you, though, that I will never have Jack's Pizza again.
Really? Why? You don't like it?
Not good.
No.
Let me offer some thoughts
The
on Jack's.
meat is under the cheese. How do you not like
but
that?
you set the bar so high.
Oh, with Brozini's?
With
I know, they didn't
Brozini's.
deliver that.
Yeah.
That Brozini's. Okay,
That's
I couldn't remember
unbelievable.
that. I kept
Yeah.
calling it Brozone the other day.
That works.
So,
Brozone.
It's a bromance. With the
Jack's
Brozone.
is an Indiana classic, and it's one of those things that even like, if you go to New York City and you go to the, to the, I forget the
Famous
joke-
original Rays.
one of the different variations of Ray's and the coal-fired and all that's wonderful, but this particular type of pie, it's something you get in Indiana. It is frozen crust. They pile the stuff on top.
Oh, you can tell it's
deep,
frozen crust.
And it's,
Yeah.
there's a place out that was similar out in Kennard, Indiana, and they actually put slices. I don't know what kind of cheese was. It was white cheese. And they put slices of
Probably
cheese
provolone.
on the pizza.
Well,
and it might have been provolone,
And
but it's
the bar was
farmer's pie.
set pretty high at lunch. I was at Pizzology.
Ah, there you go.
I haven't been there. Yeah, this is the type where it's the frozen, really thin crust, tons of toppings. Then they put the cheese over it, and you basically just pick the toppings off, smear the sauce onto the toppings, eat the toppings, and then throw the crust away.
Which is exactly what Chris did.
Which is exactly what I do. Yeah,
Well, he's vegan.
right. I don't. Of
course.
I'm totally gluten free.
This bread was not, it was cage raised. It wasn't farm raised bread.
All right, kiddies, let's talk about standardized testing, then Common Core, and then a few solutions, and then let's call it a night, because some of us have to be up in roughly 87 minutes.
Oh, my goodness.
So how is standardized testing and Common Core, maybe they work together, how are the let's talk about standardized testing. How does it affect education? What are the problems with it? Why should it go away, in your opinion, if that is your opinion?
Okay, when it comes to standardized testing itself is not really a problem. We've had standardized testing for generations back in the 70s here in Indiana.
ITBS tests way
The
back
Iowa
in the day.
standard,
Yep.
yeah. The problem is the emphasis, the end-all nature of testing at this point. Because it is tied, now, I believe funding should follow a student. I believe in teacher accountability. But I think we become so obsessed with this as the sole metric. For a school that might have a grade of a D or a failing grade, it's crucial that they improve these test scores. So the question is not so much standardized testing; it is the role it plays in our evaluation of our education system. And I think it's apparent that it's not effective. When we can also point to data that's showing we're seeing modest gains in our graduation rates, modest gains in our aptitude. It is not worth the money, the resources, the emotional impact from the testing.
Exactly. You have there's test fatigue problems.
Mm-hmm.
You have the stress that hurts the students that don't test well.
The teachers who have an incentive to cheat and change scores, like in Georgia a couple years ago.
Yes, the Atlanta Public Schools had the cheating scandal a couple of years ago. But, honestly, I point to the Republicans with regard to this part of education policy because it was a push to have an accountability measure. Mm-hmm. And it was but the problem that came with having that accountability measure is you're building on a faulty foundation. And so we're still continuing, as we talked about from the very beginning of this subject, we're still 2 economies ago with our education model, and we're not preparing students for today. Nothing has changed in the industrial education complex. And what we end up doing is you pile all of these tests. It hurts the student-teacher relationship. It hurts the student being able to actually learn something rather than just memorizing what they know they have to make sure that they get the answers right. They fill in the right bubble on the Scantron sheet. And no one is thinking critically. And at the end of the day, the only thing that it tells us is that Jeffrey had this many students that did this, but there's no benchmarking to show progress. It's they either met this standard, again, going back to the thing that I started this whole conversation with when I began, where within a 12-month period, all these kids were born. They all live in the same zip code, but they all have different needs. They all have different styles. They all have different development patterns. And we're putting them all in that same box because they are the people in that same zip code that were all born within a 12-month period.
Mm-hmm. It's funny that is the predominant thought process that goes on in the elite academic or the elite education policy circles is the testing, the Common Core, top down. When is it PISA, the international the international test that is every 4 years?
The International Baccalaureate?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so they have that, and Finland repeatedly tests first. They have one test your entire high school career at the end, the matriculation exam.
Mm-hmm.
It is there's no benchmark until you arrive, and they beat everyone every single time. Part of it, they're all white Norwegians. That makes a big difference, and it's very equality driven.
More
What do you
monolithic
mean by
culture.
that? What do you say?
Homogeneity plays the biggest role. If you
Yeah.
So if you want to actually talk about it, and I don't mean this as a I better not even talk. Like
Say it.
yeah, I'm not going to talk about it.
Okay.
It's funny
Culture
because,
matters.
because
Culture
Jeffrey
matters.
and I totally understand what
Yeah.
Greg is about to say.
There are certain things you can control for, and it's not we're number 29, it's we're number 1. But
You're saying that basically because there is a standardized socioeconomic group, I mean, where everybody is kind of like, where it is very standardized amongst the population, that plays a factor?
the biggest correlation to student achievements income, apparently
Yeah.
family income.
Yeah. You look at
Nothing else correlates close.
You look at these countries where you see these type of numbers. Finland is an example. Not only are you talking about a homogeneous culture, but you're also talking about a homogeneous geography. These
Yeah, that's
people
what I'm
all
saying.
live in the same
You-
And
place.
you're also talking about a very small geographic area.
A small
where it's-
group
You're
of-
talking about 300 million people.
I'll put Connecticut's best students up against Finland's any day, and we'll kill
Right.
them.
Well,
Because
and I
it's
think
a
this-
small geographic
yeah.
area. They're all all the neighborhoods essentially are similar.
Yep.
They all have similar income levels. They all have similar socioeconomic class. Yes.
So
you're
what
exactly
you're
right.
saying is that you can program to them effectively because they are very similar in many different factors, mainly socioeconomic.
Exactly. You can focus your routine, your education process down
Right.
pat.
But I would also,
instead, the
they
diversity
probably
of
have
here.
alternatives that we don't have. Mm-hmm.
But
and that's when we talk about the gymnasium versus the Volksschule.
What?
The vocational type school versus a university prep school. And those type of scenarios where you can make those choices. Right now, you really don't have those choices.
They have free reign. It's Montessori based in Finland. That's after they reach, I think it's like 4th or 5th grade, then they get to tailor their education curriculum.
So
And we're afraid to track students from vocational diplomas to general diplomas to college preparatory diplomas.
Because of the social stigma based around the division of labor.
Well, and
Very
everybody
strong.
has to go to college, like we've heard for the last 35
And again,
years.
I'm going to tell you right now, my stepfather was a pipe fitter. We have gotten to the point where we do not honor working people in this country. And I really blame the trades and some union infighting for this. Why aren't the trades stepping up to put together charter schools? I know the answer. It's because within the
They don't want
labor
the competition.
organizations, they don't want to stand up to the teachers' unions.
Nope. That would cause a big old confrontation.
Well, and they want to make sure that they're able to keep a tight control over who becomes part of their club. They
Oh,
don't
yeah.
want Greg to be able to apprentice with somebody for 2 years and all of a sudden become a plumber or a journeyman electrician.
And then all
They
of a
don't
sudden,
want that.
I'm not going to Algebra 2 when I'm 16.
Yeah.
So, how do you judge the performance of a teacher? How do you determine who is a good teacher, who is not?
The number of students who are willing to come to their class and learn through their method. I mean, that
enough.
sounds kind of crazy, but that's the beauty of education choice. Let's not prop up failing teachers and failing schools. Let's let them go find something else to do.
The free market.
Let's use those buildings. Likewise, if I come up with some school, an approach to education, and nobody comes to take advantage of it, then I'm not going to make it.
So we talked about, I think it was Mark Cuban. Maybe I'm getting confused with somebody else. Surveying. I think it was Mark Cuban, who is a huge fan of surveying and kind of instantly tweaking your business to make it fit what your customers are saying. So you listen to the students, and I always
The customer
filled out-
development process?
right.
Yes.
That I sent you? Yeah.
Yeah,
Customer satisfaction.
Yeah,
Right.
lean model. Yeah.
And so basically, I always never really actually filled out with any decent. I mean, if there was a really good teacher, Mrs. Burris, I love Mrs. Burris. I would always give her great ratings because I wanted her boss to know that she was a great teacher. If they were an awful teacher, I wrote they were an awful teacher. But most of the time, I never really took those seriously. I may have given one or two teachers a bad review.
But that's because you were the product, you weren't the client.
Exactly. And basically, I didn't take it seriously because I didn't think anybody would actually care what I had to say.
At different points in time, they didn't.
Right.
At this point in time, if you're a school administrator and you're not thinking in terms of market share, you need to be looking into another career because you're going to be looking for a new job soon.
And to me, that's not even right, because consumerism isn't just just purely supply and demand isn't the answer, because parenting plays such a huge role that's never held accountable in all of. I would almost want to demand that there is a contract between the teacher, the parent, and then the kid doesn't have any legal liability. But if my pay is going to be tied to how the kid performs, you better.
That's a model that you see out there too. Is that
it better? I mean, otherwise don't tie my performance to pay if they're not even going to engage and make sure that the kid shows up.
Just anecdotally, though, what I've found from experience and talking to teachers where they use those, there's not often a lot of teeth.
Oh no.
There's really no follow through. Okay, you haven't met your end of the obligation.
Yeah, it's mostly symbolic when they.
It's just like every other industry where the government gets involved. Anytime, it's just like we were talking off air as we were eating pizza about private charity and responsibility and civic duty. And Greg made the comment that we're outsourcing our guilt because
that's all government is to me.
We see people in need, and instead of saying, I need to help this person, but I don't have time right now.
We're not stopping to talk to the homeless guy that's hungry to point him in the right direction for Wheeler Mission downtown.
Right.
Or, in some cases, to walk into a Subway and buy him a damn sandwich. Yeah. Because we're not taking that responsibility on ourselves, and we're pushing it off, just like Greg said, we're getting rid of that guilt in a way that is inefficient and terrible because, again, it's a one-size-fits-all solution, and everybody has different needs. We are all individuals. We are all different. Even identical twins are different.
So by empowering the top-down approach, we are empowering teachers, students, and parents to be lazy.
Yes.
This was really early on when I first joined WAL, and the most influential class I ever had at IUPUI was Marxist theory with Jasper Sumner, and I loved him. He was one of my favorite professors ever, but he was a neo-Marxist, dyed in the wool, the ideological superstructure. Blah,
Wasn't
blah, blah,
hiding
blah.
though, was he?
No, he was the coolest, nicest guy in the world. And it occurred to me during our final exam. Our final project, when we had to do a demonstration, I decided it didn't go well because it's very odd that we're in a Marxist theory class and all of us are competing for the best grade. Because ultimately grades are just an extension of your ability to earn out in the workforce for your first job. And it shook him so much to the core and bothered him so much that it affected our friendship ever since. And there is in Marx, there's, the division, you're alienated from your fellow man by the division of labor.
Yep.
So you're not that farmer that takes care of everything, and so there's stigmas around what you do. Then you're alienated from the product of your work, so you don't own it. So that is what's happening, even though it's not Marxism, that's what's happening socially. The township assessors, like you've talked about before, you're not a member of I don't have to worry about helping you. I don't even see you as a person. You're that person. I have to go to work and you take my taxes so you can stay at home. It alienates man from his fellow man. Yeah. And until government gets out of that way, there's no way to heal those bonds and make them communities again.
People don't teach each other anymore. The little things, and one of the things I see a lot in the classroom, we've gotten so obsessed with teaching to the test that we don't talk about life skills anymore. We don't talk about interpersonal reactions. We don't talk about why it's important that you put on a shirt and tie even when you're going out to interview for that first job at McDonald's.
Having been a hiring manager and bringing in a lot of minimum wage, high school workers, fresh out of high school workers, even adults that don't have those soft skills that some of us somehow were taught, but it wasn't in school. I can tell you there was never a time in school that anybody ever taught me what interest was when I borrow money. There was never a time that anybody taught me how to balance a checkbook. There was never a time that anybody told me, hey...
I had consumer math. So I actually was taught those things, but that was the pre-testing era, and that was an option that I had.
Right.
I could have taken higher-end math, but I knew math wasn't my thing, and I took some good consumer math It taught me about interest, taught me how to keep a checkbook.
But there was still nobody that taught you that when you go and you fill out an application
Right.
at McDonald's or, the movie theater or
So
Eye contact
wherever.
matters. Shaking a hand
shaking a
matters.
hand, making that eye contact, being presentable when you're asking somebody for help.
What's
Because that's
Pythagorean's
kinda what you're
theorem?
doing.
Pythagorean's theorem? Anybody?
A squared plus B squared equals C squared.
Yeah.
Oh, you guys suck.
has something to do with dragons. So
He was a Greek triangulist.
what?
Yes, but only right triangles.
Yeah.
He was into
Euclid's third
threesomes.
proposition.
Hated
Of
isosceles.
So, what are we teaching kids if we aren't? What are?
Self-esteem and some narcissism and lack of self-awareness.
I don't even think
Oh,
that
that's
you
where I
are
got it.
teaching self-esteem. I think that you're actually beating that down
You are
because they're not
self-aware.
getting anything out of it.
Guys, I almost think that you're being overambitious. I don't think we're teaching them much of anything. I mean, really, because what we're talking about there is a concerted curriculum. Mm-hmm. I'll tell you right now. We've got our standards and we've got curriculum and such, but we don't know why we're teaching these things.
The why.
I in social studies, I can do a lot to make things relevant, and I work very hard at that. But again, when I'm looking at a student and I'm trying to explain why he needs to know a quadratic equation or needs to be able to graph,
Or spend 2 months learning about World War I.
yeah, I mean, likewise, the science student who's being forced to write an essay they'll never need to use again. We need a reality check in education, and our academy. This is something I've been pretty consistent about being critical of the academy. The academy is out of touch.
It lost its original model,
Yeah,
going all the way back to its foundation, which was the individual mentor model.
Up on the top of my bookshelf, you'll see a row of red books. And that is the 5-foot bookshelf. It was written and published in 1909 by the president of Harvard. And his theory was that if you read this all you needed in life was 5 feet of books to make you a perfectly well-rounded individual. It ranges from Chaucer and English poetry to the Quran to
Milton's in there.
Milton to the Greek and
Are
Roman
you an ISIS?
historical and philosophers. Yes, I have a Quran here. And it is written in 1909 English, and I read it because, man, it stretches your ability. I mean, it's hard. It's like reading the Iliad. It's almost like a different language. It's a dead language. And, the concept that most of the people that are graduating high school, if they've heard of any of those people, I'd be shocked. So many of the college students that I have run into, fortunately, because I've been around libertarian college students, I've been around very intelligent people like Creighton, who are, Creighton's 24, brilliant kid, and other students that I'm around, they just don't have that. They don't have any classical knowledge. Yeah. They don't have, what they have knowledge in is social skills and tomfoolery and chicanery and goofing around on
Social
Snapchat
networking.
and tech and social networking and being creative and art and.
But a lot of times it's just mimic. So it's like
Yeah,
mimetic,
exactly.
They're just mimicking what other people do. It's not original thought.
And so what is the point of education if you're not learning about classical ideas? And I think everyone in this room will say the seeds for libertarianism were planted for me in, middle and high school, certainly. One was a high school teacher, but it was through self-study that I got to this point. I am a web director because of self-study. I started my own website in 2007. I learned We're Libertarians exist because I wanted to learn how to do this stuff, and I needed a vehicle, and I figured if I'm going to put the time and effort into it, let's put it out in the world. And I solely do this because, yes, I am a libertarian, but I also wanted to learn how to build a website. And it got me the job that I have. So we're not preparing students with classical knowledge. We're not preparing students with...
It's packing things in and not self-discovery, which was
Right.
the point of education at its foundations in the beginning.
Right. We're not igniting a passion for learning. You're
They
almost
hate learning.
you're doing the opposite.
Most of
We're
them hate
teaching,
it.
we're teaching a lot of people how to hate learning.
It's a
Right.
bore when it's the most exciting thing in the world because it's it's like when Steve Jobs created the Macintosh. It's a bicycle for the mind. That's
Right.
what education is: the ability to learn.
Steve, Steve, what am I calling you, Steve?
Hi, Hi, Jeffrey.
Thank you, Christo. Chris, I think really what you're talking about is bridging the classic with the relevant.
Right.
And we have a lot of young people through technology that have a lot of talent, but we aren't providing them a foundation. And I think that is one of the keys. We've gotten so obsessed with detailed standards, talking about knowing the finer points of the Constitution and being able to do higher end math, and also being able to write a creative story. But we aren't making sure that the kids know how to add and subtract. We aren't making sure that they know how to use phonics to figure out how to spell a word or to sound something out. We're so concerned about the details, we've forgotten to make sure that the kids, that little Johnny can do his reading, writing, and arithmetic.
Right.
It has the skill set to do it.
Yeah.
So somebody explained to me very simply and quickly, because we're running out of time, what is Common Core? What is the big deal about Common Core?
It's math, reading, and science.
Okay.
The
Sounds good. Okay.
centralized, agreed upon standards by a group of it was a Harvard professor in Cal Berkeley.
And
about
it was
10 years ago.
Yeah, some Stanford people were involved in it as well. There's a consortium. There was a national organization, and in a sense, like so many things, it started off with such noble intentions.
Well, and
busing.
what you end up with is what we see in government often. It's not about the outcome, it's about the intent.
Yeah.
And once you've already built something, you continue to reform it to try to make the outcome better, but you're only intending to make the outcome better, and you end up not achieving your goal.
Which is pretty much how you just described the history of the American education system through the last 100 years.
We were number one in the world in test scores in 1978. 1979, it's established. Now we're 29th behind Czechoslovakia.
Department of Education.
Yeah, and if you take the money we've spent on federal education funding and the drug war, it is the exact same as our national debt as of today.
Wow.
Money well spent.
I've been taught.
And our graduation rate hasn't changed.
No.
Less than 1% different
Yeah.
than it was when
So-
the Federal Department of Education was created.
Yep.
We have a massive bureaucracy. We see it not only
We
at
have
the
the
federal
complex.
level,
Yeah.
you see it at the state level. You see all of these things that we continue to see states adopt policy because of the incentives that are provided, or either the carrot that's provided or the stick that's going to beat the hell out of them to get them to take that carrot. And
An
we see it in
unreachable
all
carrot.
levels, but education is probably the most destructive.
All right.
than bucks.
So let's talk about what somebody who's listening to this program can do right now.
Get your kids out of government schools.
Well, that's not possible for everybody. What about the single mom? How does the single mom or dad out there who has to work a full-time job and they can't afford to homeschool, how would you advise that they supplement their education, or what sign should they be? What question should they be asking?
Well, you got to talk to your kids about education. If you are talking, and you need to talk to them daily about what's going on in their school, and if they can't tell you that we did this, this, and this today, you need to be talking to a teacher. And when those conversations to the teachers lead to a dead end, you need to make choices, hard choices. And I absolutely understand that not everybody can can stay at home full time to teach your kids. That would be wonderful, but there are options, and you have to be able to take care of them. Just here in Indiana, if you are in the darkest hole of Gary, Indiana, there are at least 3 schools that your kid can attend without ever leaving the front door. That come to mind just sitting here. That's throughout the state of Indiana. So I don't want to hear that, well, the kid that's out in the rural situation, no, you aren't going to have quite the range, but you do have choices. And with time, it's going to get better. You have to engage in the choice, though. Do not trust this to the state.
Yeah.
Because you can go to the worst school in Indiana, the worst public school in Indiana, and if you're that standout that applies themselves and takes it upon themselves to get an education through your parent pushing you, you're going to have as good education as you could ever want because you're going to know how to learn.
Well, and one of the things that, and I actually heard on the radio this morning, not listening to Bob and Tom on my way to work, the story about this single mother whose youngest son is brilliant and a gifted athlete and a gifted artist. Everything came together for this kid. Single mom. This is the youngest of 4 that she's raised. He has an opportunity for a free ride at a private school, everything paid for, but he doesn't want to do it, and the mom doesn't know why. The reason is he doesn't want to leave the safety and comfort of the friends, the structure that he has, the community that he's a part of in that school. He's afraid of leaving the comfort of that for the unknown, even though everybody around him can tell him why that's a better decision for him to make. And he didn't have the guts to tell his mom that he didn't want to do it. She found out through a teacher. But she's doing the right thing by getting more involved to make sure. She didn't have this problem with any of the other kids. She has this problem. I use air quotes there because it isn't a problem. She has a great kid. He has a ton of potential. Do you want to continue having that beaten out of him in your government school, or do you want to have something that he can make something out of his life that none of his siblings are going to be able to do because he has that talent, he has that spark, and if you continue to beat it out of him, it's going to go away.
Yeah, that 5-foot bookshelf that I mentioned was a gift from my grandmother on my birthday, and my grandfather had bought it, and it's an original run. I mean, it's a valuable book set, but that's not why it's valuable. It was from my grandparents, and books, a set of books, are my most prized possession, and it is because in 3rd grade. There were 3 levels. There was like yellow, blue, and red. And I was in the yellow level at the very bottom. And I was not performing. I was not reading well. I was not doing well at all. My mom found out. And within 1 month, I went from yellow to blue to red. And I sat at a table every night and was forced to read and go through all the exercises. And my mom just stood over me and made me do it. And that was really one of the only academic exercises that I'm terrible at math. Didn't really ever stand over me and made me do math. But reading lit a passion. And I started going to the books. And I would walk out, and I'm not joking, like my arms would hang down as far as they could go down. And books stacked up to my chin. I would pack my backpack with as many books as possible. Because in 3rd grade, I realized that I really enjoyed reading. Instead of going from something that terrified me because I didn't have the skills to do it and I felt embarrassed and ashamed, my mom worked me through that and ignited a passion in reading that has lasted ever since. And that's the power of a parent and a teacher working together. It wouldn't have worked if the teacher said, well, I guess he should just try harder.
He's not a reader.
No, she's just not a reader. No, the teacher made the effort. Mrs. Lilly was the best teacher I ever had. Ed, you had Mrs.
Pat
Lilly.
Lilly.
Greatest teacher I ever had. And worked with me in school, after school, and then I went home and worked with my mom for that month and continued. The 2 of them together made me the intellectual that I am today.
Intellectual heavyweight with a Harvard Book of Classics.
Right.
Well, I think it is important to point out that there are some reasons to be optimistic. Here in Indianapolis, Indiana, we have probably one of the most infamous schools districts in the state, right up there with Gary as far as problems and dysfunction over the years. I can think of a couple of schools that I would be happy to send my students to that are within IPS. That wasn't the case a couple of years ago. You got the Center for Inquiry, you've got Cold Springs, you've got Center for Inquiry, and you've got Cold Springs, but there are
the one up off 71st and Keystone.
Seidner Academy, is the best gifted school in the state.
There's those opportunities. There's great charters that are popping up throughout the state.
Carpe Diem downtown.
Carpe Diem.
I can't speak highly enough of that model because I've seen it work for me. I saw it prepare me for everything after the 6th grade.
The school that I work for today, if this were an option in 1980 something when I was going through school, I wouldn't have hated school.
Yep.
And that is something that we can take away. And I think that, there are reasons to be optimistic, and we can point to specifics. It's a long way to go.
So if a parent needs more resources, what are some websites or what are some podcasts or what are some
The first thing I would
books or
do
what?
is find out where your kid is struggling. Go to YouTube and Khan Academy it.
Okay.
I mean, there's
do
so
not
it's,
talk to an expert.
and it is free. Khan Academy is free. It is
Khan
on
Academy
YouTube.
rules.
They could teach your kid from the very basics, finger paint through AP Calculus. You can get done through Khan Academy. The resources are there. It's all free. It's an awesome resource. It's probably the best thing that you can do for your kid.
I've even been known to visit a Khan Academy algebra class every once in a while to not look so ridiculously dumb. What about if I want to explore other schooling options? I mean, are there national websites or information clearinghouses on where charter schools are in my location? Or other than the Friedman Foundation, look up the Friedman Foundation for Educational Choice.
One of the best resources that I think that you can look for, and I'm pretty sure that every state has this option or close to it, but check out the virtual academy options, where you're essentially given a computer by the state, and I know that is going to fly in the face of what a lot of the libertarians would think would be.
You already paid for it.
You have, but you can tailor your education through that virtual academy, and it can really provide strong outcomes. The only thing is, either your kid has to be very focused,
Intrinsically motivated.
and motivated to do it, or you have to stand over them like Chris's mom did when he was having trouble with reading, and you have to put them on the right path. My niece is part of the Georgia Virtual Academy.
Great. It's not even a question of finding resources for new schools. You can get in online and Google search, Indianapolis charter schools and those type of things. But I would encourage you to look at the data for your own school today first. Mm-hmm. Check out greatschools.com or go to your school's website. See what their state accountability rating is. See what that teacher-to-student ratio is. See what innovations they have. Look at the one ads for the school. If you're going to a school and they're looking for a coach/social studies teacher, run. You don't do that in 2015. You get a social studies teacher. But
what do you mean?
Well, let's put it this way:
different than when we went.
Right.
When we went to school, social studies was a dumping ground for coaches. And,
okay.
And when I was first looking for social studies jobs, it was always, well, you got to be able to teach this, or you got to be able to coach this, this, and this. And I finally got to the point, the last round of hirings that I went through, I would send nasty letters to superintendents who were looking for social studies /coaches.
Okay.
I'm
So
looking,
I take
for,
it
I'm looking for
personally.
teaching positions /
Yeah, I need you to be able to take care of our football squad.
So it's sort of the principals view the humanities like Sheldon Cooper does. It's sort of the
soft
lesser.
sciences.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, get to know your school first, and then you and see what you can, if it's the right fit, see what you can do to improve, and if that's not going to be the best option, look elsewhere.
Okay. All right. Well, let's wrap up. We always like to go around. If there's anything you didn't get to mention today, it can be any topic, whatever. This is your chance to get on your soapbox and talk about what you'd like. Anything you'd like to personally plug, your Twitter, all that good stuff. Brett, you go first.
Oh gosh! Make sure you're checking out what the Advocates for Self-Government are doing. Theadvocates.org. If you haven't taken the world's smallest political quiz, please do that at theadvocates.org/quiz. If you're hanging around on Facebook, maybe check out The Kind Libertarian. I might be motivated to post some things there if I have enough new followers.
Greg is taking a picture of me, I
No,
think.
no, you go ahead. I'm
right.
looking at something I wanted to bring up.
Okay, Jeffrey.
Yes. I know that this is a show with national appeal, but I would still encourage you to check out what's happening with the Libertarian Party of Marion County. You can visit us on Facebook. You can also visit us at ndlp.org. We are hot and heavy looking for candidates, looking for new blood. We're going to make the old parties bleed for every vote they get this year. So come on out.
Your position with the party is?
Well, I guess you could have to put 2 and 2 together. I happen to be the vice chair of the Libertarian Party.
All
of Marion
right,
County.
very good. You and I also, at one point, tried to start a charter school.
Yeah,
I am the CEO and president of the...
we've still got that. We've still got that charter together.
We still have the charter together.
One of these days, we might turn the whole thing on its ear. But I think we just open up a private school, Chris's and Jeffrey's House of Learning.
Got that 501c3, yo. Donation, tax free. We got it.
Even in the midst of the Obama IRS crackdown on such organizations, we somehow managed that.
I know.
That's libertarian, not conservative. You're all right.
So
They're just going to black bag you guys.
We-
And when I think Foundations Academy and Free Enterprise are both used in that application.
Yeah.
it was heavy.
Foundation Academy, brought to you by the Free Enterprise Schools. I wanted to go with Chris's House of Cool Education, but apparently that was shut down by the board.
Thank goodness.
Gregory.
What's in a name? Now, all I was going to talk about was that there were some revelations about the NSA this week. There's a place you can go online to see if you've actually been tracked. There was a loophole where the NSA could collect the data, shoot it over to GHCQ in Britain. They would spy and then essentially share the data back to the NSA and get around a loophole and dragnet surveillance. But I put it up as a meme 2 days ago, but we can put it up again if you want to see if you've been spied on. And then Lenovo has been installing backdoor software on all their laptops for the NSA to track and the router companies in the firmware. It was discovered by Kaspersky, a Russian security intelligence firm. There's basically a backdoor key.
Is my Acer cool?
No.
Well, who?
Not at all.
No, that
You're
was
good.
horrible.
I mean, granted though,
Acer
like
never was
you have
cool.
to be operating already. I mean, we talked about this a year ago. You're operating under the assumption there is no anonymity, and there isn't.
Listen, there's public and there's unpublic. There is no privacy.
I walk into a
forget it.
Facebook chat room, and the first words out of my mouth are ISIS, ISIL, dash, Allahu Akbar, just like so they know that I know they're there.
Right. All right. Well, my final bit. I read today that the world's energy crisis has finally been solved. Did you know that there is a company that has created a wearable device that you put on your wrist? So I've got my Fitbit band here. You put it on your wrist, and an up and down motion charges. You guys know the motion I'm doing
Faster.
here?
Shake weight.
Faster.
Yeah.
Very shake weighted.
An up and down shake weight, and the up and down motion moves.
I'm almost charged, Chris.
Yeah, it moves. It moves the battery in the device, and it charges that. So then you can plug it in USB in and charge your phone. You might be able to get a full charge, depending on what you're watching. The company.
This is considered a groundbreaking device.
Yes, this is.
It's the same thing as the brake friction on Toyota Priuses.
This is brought to you by Pornhub. There.
Oh my God!
This is not even an onion. Go to our Twitter.
Is this real?
Very real?
Did you hear it on Stern?
No, Pornhub.
Joel Osteen?
The Bob and Tom Twitter. We tweeted that out, and then we retweeted it over at the We're Libertarians Twitter, and you can check the story out. It was on Gizmodo today. They've solved the world's energy crisis
That's not
finally.
bad.
Hydroelectric turbines being driven by sewage flowing through pipes. That this is along the same lines in my book.
Way
The
to take
Portland
full stack.
yeah.
Way to take a sexy moment where we're charging the world's, and then you're bringing sewage into the whole deal. We're talking about the Pornhub.
I really threw you off with that one, didn't I, Chris?
did.
You're completely discombobulated.
I was all excited, and then
It was like he discovered the flux capacitor, and then you were like, "We don't even need it."
we got shit.
Yeah,
right, and it flows downhill.
yeah.
It's also like 11, and I'm 2 hours past
Yeah.
bedtime now. So, thank you for joining us. I thought this was a very good episode, and Brett was here. So we always appreciate it.
Hey, this will be the third episode I've heard.
This is Jeffrey's first.
Right on.
This is the third episode in a row. My voice is cracked like a little teenager,
Oh man,
little preteen.
you're gonna get that whisker.
I'm hoping
One of these
so.
days.
I'm hoping so. It's just dry in here. I got a nosebleed during the show again, and I need to run the dehumidifier.
Get your rest.
Or
Get your
humidifier.
rest, Chris.
I know, I need to. Old age is setting in. All right. Thank you for joining us here on the show, Jeffrey. Thank you for joining us.
Yes, thank you both.
The best of luck. We'll see you next week because we're committed. We're in initial talks with the cast and crew of the Cyberloafing podcast to come and join us on the next one. So, Greg, decide now if you'd like to join us.
Is that going to be next week?
Maybe.
I'll be in New Orleans. I won't be here.
That's convenient. All right. So, as always, we promise
to do better next time.